Sword of Coming Chapter 8:14. The archway at the ferry crossing in Jidu is called Underwater Cave Sky. The water surface of Dadu is especially vast here, even as wide as 300 miles. Qin Pingon came here last time with a sword on his back and a red wine hanging on his waist. The attire of the gourd was just a sword fairy last time, but now it has been replaced by a night tour, and the green bamboo hiking stick is missing in his hand. At the wooden slave crossing of the Water Dragon sect, the founder of the mountain planted more than 1,000 orange trees from the Immortal family. Before the soldiers passed away, he said with a smile that he had a mediocre practice in this life, and only 1,000 wooden slaves were bequeathed to their children. Qin Pingon thought of Sun Yuan, the ancestor of Yu Guizhong, for no reason. Hearing Jiang Shangzhen said that the real last words of Sun's life in this life are actually 3 words that are self-explanatory: Yu Jia is poor. It seems that all the sects with orderly inheritance and continuous incense on the mountain have a budget top spot. Qin Pingon and Ning Yao apologized and said, "We have been delayed for a few days more than expected in Xianzong, so I want to accompany you to visit Longgong Dongtian and the Fushui Island. I need to go straight to the Zhou Xian department of the Daoist dynasty, talk to Emperor Lu and Yang Qingyan, the national teacher, and then meet Sun Jie and Xiao Jingji of the north and south sects of the Water Dragon sect, and talk about the lease or sale of Fushui Island. You are on Fushui Island. When I get better, the scenery in the Longgong Cave is extremely beautiful, and it won't be boring to go around for a few days. I will try to go back quickly." Ning Yao nodded and saw that Qin Pingon didn't mean to leave and said, "I've mentioned this for you on the side of Li Jianxian on the Jianhu Lake in Fuping." She said it's no problem. 30%, a Fushui Island that has been without an owner for many years. If you really have an idea to build a summer resort on the mountain in a foreign country, you can buy it directly. There is no reason for the Water Dragon sect to block 3 things. If the price is not agreed, just leave it to dry and turn around to bargain. Millet Grains stretched out his hand to block his mouth and smiled. Li Jianxian can be heroic, so he waved his hand and said that it was a big deal. If you negotiate, you will bargain. If you don't negotiate, you will cut people. Rent a hammer. Yes. Someone slapped her in the face. Qin Pingon rubbed the head of the millet grains, glanced at the long queue and smiled with Ning Yao. "I will help you buy a few customs clearance documents to Xiadongshan before leaving. It is a fairy orange wooden seal. It's unique, but it's a pity that you can't take it with you. You must return it to the Water Dragon sect. After passing the archway, there are dozens of stone inscriptions in front of you. Those of you who are interested can take a look at them, especially those who built the stone bridge and the dragon pavilion during the Daping period. The water stele introduces the origin of the stone bridge construction and the excavation of the Dragon Palace Cave Sky." Ning Yao glanced at Qin Pingon and asked, "It's because of conscience that is uneasy, so make up for it." Qin Pingon looked blank. Ning Yao smiled and said, "Gimei on Osmanthus Island, Yuang Cliff and Chunlu Garden, plus this underwater Dragon Palace and Fushui Island are all good places to drink tea and wine. Maybe there is a night boat. Qing, can you come here?" These Xianxia mansion residences are all the private property of young mountain owners. Pei Qian watched his nose, his heart. The white-haired boy laughed silently, and the small rice grains were too small to figure out. "Good people and owners earn more money and friends, okay?" Qin Pingon said. "Gui Mai Xiao Yuan and Yinjia have been idle for many years." Ning Yao remembered something. Xiu Rongchong, the Yuan Ingjian of Duckweed Sword Lake, is willing to serve as the honorable guest of Kaik Mansion. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "It's a good thing. Earlier I visited Zixuanfeng on the side of Patafeng, and Yuan Lingdian also agreed to this matter. Because the last time Qin Pingon traveled to Xiadongshan, the Water Dragon sect happened to be on the 10th and 15th of October, a ghost festival and a water official relief day, and the 2 most important jade and gold pots of the year will be built successively, so at that time, there were especially many tourists." Qin Pingon waited nearly half an hour to buy the customs clearance wooden sign. This time there was no Zhai Jianjian in the Water Dragon sect, so the queue time was not as exaggerated as last time. The Water Dragon sect rented a wooden seal, but it was different from the seal script last time, which meant more. After the Water Dragon sect female cultivator handed out the square seal, she smiled and actively reminded, "My son, now our seals can be bought and sold." After many years, she apparently still recognized the blue-shirt swordsman in front of her who had traveled through the small cave again. She had a good memory. She had the same sword on the back and the same red wine gourd on her waist. Besides, there were people holding a green bamboo stick beside her. She had such an unforgettable ability. After seeing these, it was hard not to remember. Last time this guest asked if the seal could be bought and sold, and it made a joke at the time. Died unjustly. Qin Pingon smiled awkwardly and bit the bullet and asked, "Dare to ask the girl if it's a sale, what price?" The white-haired boy covered his belly with one hand and held the shoulder of the millet grain with the other, laughing so that his stomach hurts. Oh, humiliation. Millet scratched his face. What is the good guy mountain lord when he doesn't take himself to the rivers and lakes? He likes to negotiate business with strange girls. Fortunately, I was on Sister Ning's side and helped to say a lot of good things. Qin Pingon looked at the seals in his hand and found that the side paragraphs were all commenting on the ranks of the calligraphers in Ezhou. Such and such books are like the monarchs of Zti who are respected and have gods. XX book is like a fast horse bursting out with sharp blades, a hard bow suddenly and the birds are flying. XX book is like a deep mountain and he is refreshed and he wants to retreat to the cloud when he sees people. These are all kind words and there are quite unceremonious comments almost pointing to the nose to curse people, saying that the so-and-so regular script is like a rich man describing vulgarity, running script like a maidservant with a devilish body and ultimately not upright. The female cultivator smiled and replied, 2 seals, only a small summer money, buy 2 and then give 1. Qin Pingon shook his head. The price is too expensive. Besides, Qin Pingon can be regarded as a half-expert nowadays. Besides, he also has the handwritten copybooks of Su Zi and Lu Qi that his husband asked for help. Qin Pingon couldn't help frowning slightly. Could it be that the Shuilong sect encountered something that desperately needs the gods' money, or there is no reason for such a cornucopia to rely on the Dragon Palace cave sky? And this means that if you go back to talk with the Water Dragon sect about the purchase and sale of Fushui Island, it is very likely that you will suffer a little extra in terms of price. Rejecting the Water Dragon sect female cultivator, Qin Pingon handed several seals to Ning Yao and the others, and roughly talked about the Xianzong's questioning process before leaving Mu Nudu and heading to the capital of the Daoist dynasty. Ning Yao didn't say anything from beginning to end. When Qin Pingon was hurried in the bustling crowd, Ning Yao looked at the figure who seemed to have fled and she laughed. In fact, how could she not believe Qin Pingon's trivial matter? It's not a Kai fan who is Kai fan mural city. Those goddess pictures, aren't they just burdens? Qin Pingon walked out of the ferry and walked into the water on a secluded shore in Jidu, running the watermark of the mortal creature, and used a water escape method to swim far away. The Zhou Xian department of the Daoist dynasty had previously received a Feijin letter from Jinzuan Ferry and sent it directly to the national teacher Yang Qingon, saying that he hoped to visit Emperor Lu, and his signature was Chen. Daoist Lu dynasty, where the Zhou Xian department of the imperial court was located, was actually the Yunshao palace of the Yang family. This magnificent Taoist palace was the most prestigious immortal palace in Luzhou, northern Zhou. In comparison, it is simply a shabby settlement on the mountain. After receiving the secret letter, Yang Qing, the national teacher, left the Zhou Xian office immediately, went to the palace and met His Majesty. The Lu dynasty of Din, at the beginning of the founding of the country, regarded itself as the blessing of water and virtue, which can be seen from the name of the country. Today the emperor summoned more than 30 prodigies from the locals in a small warm pavilion in Xiangyang. It was nothing more than to encourage these future talents, and then select a few people to ask questions and rewards. As for the specific list of candidates and standing positions, the Ministry of Rites has long concluded that if the emperor is in a good mood, of course he can ask a few more people. Afterwards, it is nothing more than a gift from the imperial court, just a few more. This warm pavilion is not big. Today when there are many people it is slightly crowded, but the young prodigies are very flattered. There are a few of the cold-born with trembling lips and composure. It is not easy to be rude because they all listen. It is said that His Majesty the Emperor would choose this place only when he saw the important ministers in the center of the temple. According to the saying in the officialdom of the capital, this is the place where His Majesty the Emperor talked with others. Today Emperor Lu's finally singled out a young man from the border town, and asked the question, "I only know the orders of the rich, but don't know the laws of the country, what to do. How to deal with it appropriately." Fortunately, the national teacher helped to clear the siege. The emperor stood up, smiled and comforted the uneasy young man, and said that in the future if he had an idea he could submit his thoughts to the Libuyaman. Under the leadership of the superintendent's palm seal, the group of young prodigies filed out, stepping gently, and left the warm pavilion. Yang Xian struck a door with the emperor and talked about the visit by the hermit Qin Pingon. The emperor smiled and said, "So fast? Did the hermit come directly to our Beiju Luzhou as soon as he left the Confucian temple?" Yang Qing nodded fearfully and said, "This is mostly the case. The Chongxian department just received Qin Pingan's greeting message on the front foot, and received a message from the mountain on the back foot." Taihui Jianzong Lu Jinglong asked Jianzhenzong together, climbing all the way to Yang Yunfeng, and directly demolished the other party's patriarch hall. Sovereign Yang Ke did not stop him. Kaching Chui Gongzhuang had a dispute with others and was injured. Immortal Wei Essence I sacrificed the moon flying mirror, still under Lu Jinglong's sword, and was seriously injured. However, this is because the Chongxian department has spies installed on the side of Xianzong, so it is earlier than other ordinary sections. I learned about it in a few days. The emperor motioned the national teacher to sit down and talk. On the couch there was a food box filled with various pastries. The emperor pushed the food box toward the national teacher, and then he twisted a piece of apricot flour cake. Chu and smiled and asked, "Is it inappropriate to see him here?" Yang Qing nodded fearfully and said, "Your Majesty and him officially met for the first time, so you really don't need to be so close. And the many decorations here." The national teacher looked around and smiled. "It will reveal too much of your Majesty's thoughts." The emperor asked curiously, "Xianzong is such a big sect, and on its own site, it can't stop the two Jade Pure Realm Sword Immortals from climbing up gradually?" Xianzong has one Immortal and one Jade, and there are a large number of Earth Immortal monks. At first glance it can be said that they have a deep foundation. It is just that Wei Jing and Yang Qin have their own thoughts, and they are in harmony with each other for a long time. This is a taboo of any sect. Yang Qing was afraid to sit sideways facing the emperor. The Taoist Tianjun held the tail in his hand. The white jade pole was inscribed on the seal with 8-character inscriptions. It was used for humility and inscription function. After hearing the words, the emperor nodded, took another piece of pastry and put it in his mouth. After slowly swallowing it, he asked, "Then go to your Chongxian office to serve guests?" Yang Qing fearfully smiled and said, "It's your Majesty's Chongxian department." The emperor clapped his hands and said, "A family does not talk about two things. Emperor Lu's flowing water, Yang's Yunshao Palace in iron." This rebellious argument has actually been circulated in the ruling and opposition parties for many years. But I have to admit that, whether the Chongxian department or Yunshao Palace, it is in the hands of Emperor Lu he can make progress. Yunshao Palace is a typical temple for descendants. A family and a surname seem to be hereditary, similar to that of Longhu Mountain. In fact, the two brothers Yang Ningzhen and Yang Ningxing went to Wuxia world, and the emperor also had high hopes. The next day in the Chongxian office, Emperor Lu met the young hermit who arrived on time as scheduled, and did not make the emperor wait for a while. In fact, there is really a Chongxian office on duty by a court official. It occupies a small area. The emperor entertains the Sword Immortal in Chongxian. It is in a secluded courtyard in the Chongxian department. A young prince has no outsiders. After Qin Pingon followed Yang Qing into the hospital, he bowed his hands in a salute. Emperor Lu had already stood up and waited, holding his fists in return, and the young prince beside him called Mr. Qin respectfully. After the young man got up, he looked at the sword fairy in green shirt, full of curiosity and longing and a little awe and admiration. Qin Pingon came to the Chongxian department this time. In fact, there are 3 things. First of all, thanks to the Lu family's protection of Luopashen Qin Lingjun's early desecration, Dadu, a member of the dragon, will take away a considerable part of the water transport. For a dynasty like Lu's, this is a real break. Therefore, the vassals of the dynasties and vassals of the past dynasties, let alone protect the way and give way, will only make troubles. Then there was a discussion with Emperor Lu's about cross-continental commerce, and finally it was the sale of Fushui Island. Talking about it is actually a word of money. Emperor Lu was extremely vigorous and resolute. He had no courtesy on the profanity. It was straightforward to say that if it hadn't been for Lingyuan father Shen Lin and Longting Ho Liyuan, he would have greeted Daiwan's imperial court a long time ago. He didn't recognize Mr. Qin at that time. Allowed, but now is different from the past, so in the future there will be similar violations. Just say hello, Da Yuan, and all vassals will be released. As for cross-continental trading, Yang Qing might have already discussed with Qin Pingon at the Gongdalan of the Confucian Temple, so today the emperor directly took out a booklet. It is not thin. It contains information about various Daoist specialties and mountains. The price of the goods is detailed and appropriate, as well as the drawing plan for different steps of Luopishan. The household officials who will be responsible for the specific docking with Luopishan in the future are refreshing. Qin Pingon reads it at a glance. Qin Pingon closed the booklet and said with a smile, "Your Majesty is interested, there is no objection on the side of Luopa Mountain." Not surprisingly, within Jiazi, Emperor Lu seemed to be a little surprised. Mr. Qin doesn't make a counteroffer anymore? Otherwise there will be less fun and there is no reason to drink. At the Zhou Xian department, there are many 100-year-old three-gear wines. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "If your Majesty doesn't mind, you can just stop drinking Dragon Palace Dongshan's third wine. I have a few pots of wine from my own wine shop." The emperor asked, "But the Qingshan Mountain Jiushui of the Great Wall of Jianqi?" Qin Pingon laughed blithely. How could it be that he was inviting the emperor to drink fake wine? "It's okay, you can remedy it." Qin Pingon took out 3 pots of wine and put it on the table, then took out a copybook from his sleeve and handed it to the young prince. He smiled and said, "It's my husband's copybook." The young man's face turned red instantly. He hurriedly got up, took the handwritten copybook of Mr. Wenxing with both hands, thanked him and took his seat. The young man held the scroll cautiously. Regarding the purchase and sale of Fushui Island, Yang Qing is afraid that the Zhongxian department will write a letter to the Shuilong Zhongzhu Shirtang, which belongs to 30% of the Dayuan dynasty. The second visit to the Zhongxian office in return. After drinking the Qingshan wine, Qin Pingon planned to leave. The boy suddenly pulled the emperor's sleeve slightly. The emperor laughed and said, "Mr. Qin, in your opinion, does Lu Jun have the qualifications to practice martial arts?" This question is naturally redundant. Whether a prince's aptitude is good or bad, whether he is practicing Taoism or practicing martial arts, he needs to wait until his youth before asking a foreigner. Qin Pingon said, "Very average." The young man looked sad. Qin Pingon smiled again. But martial arts training is not the same as practice. It also talks about qualifications, not qualifications. For example, my martial arts qualifications were very common back then. It's just hard work to practice martial arts. If you want to find a boxing teacher master, I can do it reluctantly, but you and me are not considered as formal mentors and apprentices. The youth was full of vigor in an instant, and practicing boxing was originally a second thing. Finding a bully master is the top priority. As for the only person in his mind who can be his own master, he was once far away, but now he is close to him. Finally, Qin Pingon gave Lu Jun a handbook and talked about some rough training matters. Emperor Lu and the national teacher Yang Qing looked at each other. They were very surprised. It was actually a copy of Shaking Mountain. Boxing. Does this young hidden official have the origin of boxing techniques with Guyu, the great seal martial artist? Qin Pingon came from the gate of the Zhongxian office today and also walked from there. The 3 emperors of Lu's came all the way to the door, watching the Yufeng in the green shirt leave. The emperor chuckled softly. "I have imagined a lot of scenes when we met before, but when we really sit down and deal with each other, it seems that there is nothing left. Even if you drink wine, it seems to be drinking tea, even a little tasteless." Yang Qing is afraid, the voice reminded. "Your Majesty, don't take it lightly, this is the real power of this person's cultivation." The emperor nodded and glanced at his most important son beside him. At this moment, the boy didn't know he was about to become the Prince of Dian. The emperor took his gaze back and laughed with the national teacher. "Then look at the money for a few more years." After Qin Pingon left the Daoist dynasty, the wind was very fast, and occasionally in the night he encountered the lights under the mountains, slowed down and lowered his figure, passing by those human cities, and there was still too much time to look at the many scenes. The world is vast and there are still good mountain poems. The river flows down and the moon is up and down, the crows and the dogs bark in the back alleys, and the market claps loudly at night. Instead of going straight to Mu Nudu and paying a homage to the Water Dragon sect, Qin Pingon first walked to the newly built water mansion of Lingyuan Master Shenlin. Suddenly he understood why the Water Dragon sect was short of money. If Shenlin only used the old Nanchuan water palace owner and his family, it is absolutely impossible to build such a dugong mansion, not to mention the relationship between the old Shuizheng Li Yuan and the Shuilongzong. The Longting Ho Shuifu must also be on credit with the Shuilongzong. After Xinlin saw Qin Pingon, he immediately sent a letter to Longting Ho Mansion, and Dada Gong Ho was so fast that he did not lose to an ascendant monk, so Qin Pingon only waited less than half an hour before seeing him. The black-clothed boy Li Yuan, when the latter heard that Qin Pingon was going to spend money to buy Fushui Island, he was heartbroken and jumped up and spat in the direction of the Water Dragon sect, saying that it was already Lao Tzu's territory. Sun Jie and Xiao Jingji had the shame to collect money, but after hearing Qin Pingon talk about the situation on both sides of Fuping Jianhu and Zhou Xian department, Li Yuan didn't go directly to Shuilong Zongzu Shirtang to curse the street, and Xinlin said that we should write a letter to Shuilong Zong. Xinlin glanced at Qin Pingon, who gently shook his head and did not agree with Li Yuan, who is not stingy. Li Yuan sat on the chair with a grin and wondered, "Brother Qin, since you don't need my help with Xinlin, you just made a special trip, so there is nothing else?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, Qin Lingjun succeeded in his profanity. "It is not easy. I just happened to pass by Jidu. Can I thank you too well?" Li Yuan kicked off his boots, sat cross-legged and said sadly, "Then why didn't you go to my mansion?" "Why, I think Xinlin's official hat is bigger than me, so I came here." "You brother, it's so embarrassing." Suddenly, Li Yuan's eyes lit up. He glanced at the young sword Immortal Qingshan, and then at Xinlin, who was actually very good-looking. He smiled, "Got it." With a cough, he bowed his head and did not wear shoes. He picked up a boot in each hand and walked to the door. "I will go outside and guard is enough for you too?" Xinlin smiled and didn't care. Qin Pingon said helplessly, "Say it in advance and follow me to the Dragon Palace Cave Sky. Don't be so nonsense. Otherwise you won't be together." Li Yuan was puzzled. "Are there women traveling with you?" Qin Pingon nodded and said, "I took my wife." Li Yuan slapped the chair and laughed. "Isn't it beautiful that my husband has a couple of 3 wives for concubines, 5 or 6 Daoists?" Qin Pingon squeezed his sleeves with both hands and said with a smile, "Say it again, Long Ting Ho, just say it, let me finish it here and I will take you there." Li Yuan crossed his arms around his chest, tilted his head and squinted his eyes and said, "What's the matter, did she beat you or me?" Qin Pingon got up and said, "Forget it, just stay here, I'll go to Water Dragon sect alone." Li Yuan quickly put on his boots and vowed to say, "What do you want?" "I'm the kind of person who doesn't know the generality. After seeing my sister-in-law, I promised to give you enough face." Qin Pingon hesitated for a while but still took Li Yuan with him. After Lu Jinglong left the boundary of Suyun sect, he quietly went to Tunghua Mountain, and then returned to Zhongmen Pianran Peak and found the White Head. Next time he traveled down the mountain, he went to Yunyan Kingdom to inquire about the 9-level martial artist Cui Gongzhuang. Bai Shou sat on the bamboo chair with Erlang's legs tilted, rubbing his chin and said, "Cui Gongzhuang, I've heard of the great master. He is a good martial artist. Relying on being the chief guest of Xianzong, he will kill and train a man. It's not a mess." Lu Jinglong briefly talked about the process of questioning the sword. The White Head was puzzled. "Cui Gongzhuang is so virtuous, so why don't you worry about it? If you see my brother Qin in the future, you can't take a detour?" Lu Jinglong shook his head and said, "Qin Pingon is not worried about Wufu mountaineering and other people's boxing, but privately in the country of Yunyan, where the rivers and lakes have long bowed to Cui Gongzhuang, he and his disciples and grandchildren are going wild." Bai Shou said, "With the lessons of raising Yunfeng and the illusory 100-year agreement, Cui Gongzhuang will definitely converge a bit." Lu Jinglong smiled and said, "When you travel to Yunyan country, Cui Gongzhuang will understand a truth." The White Head said tentatively, "Do you mean that besides you, there is a me who is a generation lower than you too, who will stare at his sect and disciples every other way?" Lu Jinglong smiled and nodded. This big disciple of the mountain is naturally not stupid. For this type of inspection and filling, there is no need for Qin Pingon to say more. Lu Jinglong will do it without any leakage. Even if it is not for the Pianran Peak Baisho to travel down the mountain to the Yunyan Kingdom, he will be replaced by another sect of the sect. Lu Jinglong got up and said, "I will return to Xianzong immediately. I need to stay there for a while. Don't be slacking about practicing swords on the mountain." The White Head nodded. "Go Taihui sword sect is covered by me, who dares to ask the sword." Lu Jinglong smiled and asked, "Where is Wen Quan?" Bai Shou said angrily, "Who are you, master?" Lu Jinglong's figure disappeared in a flash and went to Xianzong. Tingyu Peak on Suyun Zhongzhu Mountain is where Feiqing ancestors' monastic mansion is located. Wei Jingzhen looked at the secret letter in his hand, his face uncertain and horrified. If the letter is correct, an ancestor, a dignified immortal, is equivalent to reaching a ghost gate without knowing it. Replaced by anyone in Luzhou in Beiju, sending this confidential letter, Wei Jing would feel that it was a vicious divorce plan. But since it was Lu Jinglong, Wei Jing was willing to believe a little bit. Wei Jing finally laughed. What a terrestrial water dragon, the road is promising. I underestimated you, Tai Hui Jianzong. Alright, just do what you said. If it can happen and get rid of this rebellious family thief who dared to deceive the master and destroy the ancestor, I will apologize publicly to you, Tai Hui Jianzong, and take the initiative to climb the mountain to apologize. He promised to hide Lu Jinglong in Suyun Zhongzhu Mountain for 3 reasons. Lu Jinglong's swordsmanship is outstanding. Once he is in the fairyland, he is extremely powerful. I have only heard that Lu Jinglong likes to reason and is a little bit pedantic. I never thought it was not the case. Such a person as the master of a sect must not be easily provoked. Lu Jinglong also has a close friend of the sword fairy named Qin Pingon from the Great Wall of Jianqi. The key point is that this person is moody, and Lu Jinglong's previous mountaineering, singing and making peace with each other matched perfectly. Wei Jingtai dared to be sure of this foreign sword fairy. Once he was ruthless, he would only act more unscrupulously than Lu Jinglong when he started to do things, but he also thought carefully. This kind of cruel but uncertain sword fairy, it is normal not to be a friend. Don't really engage with it. Wei Jingxiu thought of one person, Jiang Shangzhen, for no reason. One of the 36 small caves in Longgong Dongtian, Qin Pingon first negotiated the sale with Sun Jie and Xiao Jingji of the Water Dragon sect, and got a copy of Luopashan Water Dragon sect, Dian Chongxian office and Fuping Jianhu quartet the land lease on the mountain. The price was so fair that Qin Pingon felt that his conscience was troubled, and eventually landed on Fushui Island with Li Yuan. Li Yuan saw the sword-backed woman who walked slowly. She looked good, barely worthy of my brother Qin. Hey, can't tell her level. Just as Li Yuan was about to speak, Qin Pingon reached out and held his head and said, How did you promise me? Li Yuan said, What's the girl's name? Ning Yao glanced at Qin Pingon, who was holding back a smile, and said, Ning Yao. Sort of Coming Chapter 8:15. I heard that the woman in front of me called herself Ning Yao. Even if there are many people with the same name and surname in the world, Li Yuan is not stupid. At least there are no 2 Ning Yao in the Great Wall of Jianqi that Qin Ping has traveled. Li Yuan's legs trembled and he quickly grabbed Qin Pingan's arm. The supernatural powers of the old master who had been violent in the past to make up for the dead are a must. Because of his guilty conscience, he did not dare to look at Ning Yao. Li Yuan just talked to Qin Pingan. A word that blessed the soul. Qin Pingan, brothers belong to brothers, the truth belongs to the truth. You really don't deserve Ning Jianxian. Can Miss Ning shout casually? Must call Ning Jianxian. As for whether the Ning Jianxian appreciates or not, Li Yuan doesn't know and doesn't guess. But fortunately, Qin Pingan smiled happily and sincerely. He probably thought that Li Yuan had no problem saying this. Only then did Li Yuan take a reassurance pill, turned around cautiously, straightened the flap of the water robe on his body, and said in a polite manner, Jidu Li Yuan, pay homage to Ning Jianxian. Ning Yao pinched the sword art ceremony with one hand and said, Ascension City Ning Yao, I have seen Jidu Liu. Li Yuan was promoted to the post of Dadu Longting Ho, and he was awarded the Confucian Temple official title a few years ago. He is like the first-class prince on the mountain in the Shanshui officialdom. Therefore Ning Yao called the other party Liu, which is a very decent respect. It is true that Li Yuan has a bright smile on his face, but it is really sad and true. This glorious scene, no one has used fairy art to copy it. Otherwise he can frame the portrait well in the future, hang it in the lobby of the main house of his home mansion, and directly use it as the plaque. Regarding Ning Yao's deeds and rumors, there is actually a watershed. Before the battle that swept across Hauran, there was mainly one statement about Ning Yao. There are actually only 3 kinds of geniuses in sword repair in the world. The sword fairy embryo that ranks among the Yuan Ying, the 100-year-old golden pill of the world. The last one, of course, is Ning Yao. After the 5th world was opened up and the door opened, Ning Yao's reputation has stepped up several steps. In fact, before the closing of the Temple of Confucius, some mountain trails came back to Hauran, such as Ning Yao's success without suspense. The situation is like a broken bamboo which makes people dizzy. This means that Ningyao has been recognized by the Great Road of the world. Therefore, the monk of Howran Mountain, everyone has long been convinced that this young woman will be the first person in the whole world in the future. This is not an avenue at all because Ningyao is destined to reach the top of the avenue, and for a long time in the future she will be alone on the top of the world with no one beside her. In addition, there is a mysterious saying on the mountain: who would dare to kill Ningyao now, even if it is a 14th realm great monk, then definitely don't go to Wuxia world in the future. He will definitely die, and he must die inexplicably. Li Yuan is very faithful. Xiaomi Li secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was not a woman who showed up with the good man mountain lord today. She heard that Dadu Lingyuangong is a good-looking woman. However, it seems that besides the white head of Pianran Peak, there is another one who is a brother to the good mountain master. Pei Qian and Li Yuan thanked Li Yuan for the last time Chen Lingjun went blasphemy. Li Yuan contributed the most, and the trouble at the Thunder God house in Baby Mountain, this Longting Ho was very loyal. After Chen Lingjun returned to Luopa Mountain, I often talk about this with Nuanshu and Xiaomi Li, saying that he is really not bragging about making friends and has opened his eyes. In the world, apart from his own master, he is naturally ranked first, so Chen Lingjun would have to be second, and Nuanshu and Mili can be tied for third because stupid people have the blessing of stupid, so lucky to know first and second. As a result, the millet grains and Pei Qian showed off as soon as they turned their heads. Then the fate of Uncle Jingqing can be imagined. Ningyao asked, "What price does the water dragon sect charge on this Fushui island? How much rain money?" Longgong Dongshan is recognized as a religious resort in Beiju Luzhou. The 4 seasons are like spring, summer is not hot and winter is not cold, but it is rainy. Most people who practice here are not short of immortal money and practice water law. Monks and his like, every time it rains they intercept the rain with various zombies and collect it into the small world. In fact, most of the practice in the mountains is like this. Except for opportunities, they rely on the accumulation of water milling skills. The 2 realms of Yuanying and Feishing are laughed as the 1,000-year king and 80,000-year turtle. They only say that the Yuanying realm is not stained with red dust. In addition to avoiding the catastrophe, bit by bit practice diligence is needed to increase the chance of breaking the bottleneck. In addition to a fairy family mansion that has been kept fortified by the masters of the past generations, the island itself is worth a lot of immortal money. In addition, there are 4 immortal relics such as Tushuatan Yongleshan Grottos, Tai Zhuofang Ruins and Xianxia Princess Monument. At that time, Ningyao took Pei Qian and several of them had already visited one by one. Pei Qian was very interested in the monument to the rise of immortals. Xiaomi Li likes the pond with strong water transportation, and is planning to build a small hut over there. White-haired boy, it has already been said that no one should grab the grottos and iron workshops, and they will all belong to it. It seems that the site has been divided up before Qin Pingon bought the Fushui Island. Qin Pingon lightly stepped on the ground and said with a smile, "This is one of the 3 most suitable places to practice in the small cave, except for the main city island." According to the estimation of the Water Dragon sect, the original price 200 Guyuqian. Because Dragon Palace Cave and Sky are shared by the 3 forces, Zhou Department and Duckweed Sword Lake both confiscated the money. Water Dragon sect accounted for 40%, so I offered 80 Guyuqian. I was not embarrassed to counteroffer. Letter to Luopa Mountain, send money over immediately. In fact, the earliest Water Dragon sect was reluctant to sell Fushui Island, and a very small meeting of the Patriarch's Hall was more inclined to lease. Even if it was agreed for 300 to 500 years, it would not hurt, but it was really unable to hold the Duckweed Sword Lake in Cheng. The 3 consecutive secret letters from the Profound Office and the Lingyuan Palace were just an exception for the young mountain owner of the Luopa Mountain in Aquarius. This is really not the small family spirit of the Shuilong sect, who cares about the amount of money from the gods, but involves the great luck of a small cave. Before talking about business at the Shuilong Zhongzhu Shurtang, Qin Pingon learned that Li Yuan, who was born in Shuizheng, was actually seated on the right side of the chair, and the 2 Yupu realms Sun Jia and Shao Jingji, both of which seemed to be surprised. No blame. Ningyao hesitated and said, "When I came here I brought some money with me." On the side of Feishing City in the colorful world, Chuanfu will accurately account for all the combat achievements made by sword repair in accordance with the regulations. In addition, every time sword repair breaks the realm, there will also be a gift from Feishingcheng Chuanfu. The sword needs money. But what about Ningyao? Gao Yu and the entire Quan mansion, what else can they do? They can only bite the bullet and settle accounts. For example, Ning Yao is the first sword repairman in the Jade Pu realm, the first fairyland, the first to ascend. Realm. Not to mention the merits of those who killed the gods, especially the one-eyed people of the ancient 12 high-ranking gods, plus the salaries of the sword repairs of the hermit. The account books opened by Ning Yao are both honorable and heartbroken. So now Ning Yao has become the biggest creditor of Fei Xingcheng. Simply put, she is extremely rich. Qin Pingon complained, "What is said, there is no such reason." Ning Yao glanced at Qin Pingyan, and then at Long Tingho, who deliberately looked stupid and pricked her ears. She smiled without saying a word. When you say something, don't you just stare at your voice and raise your eyebrows? Isn't it on the side of your friends, that is more of the head of the family? The group walked towards the ready-made Xianxia mansion. The Dragon Palace Cave Sky in Beiju Luzhou, together with the Lion Peak and the Lushui Hole on the Sea, was actually one of Li Liu's summer residences. Li Yuan was also uncertain whether Qin Pingon knew about this now. Anyway, the last time Li Lu appeared here, Qin Pingon, a fellow villager, seemed to be kept in the dark. Li Yuan drew out a jade plate from his sleeve, carved with a dragon pattern on one side, and an ancient seal with a great blue rain phase, and handed it to Qin Pingon. Now Qin Pingon is the master of Fushui Island. You see, Li Yuan should have given out the jade card of the Abbott's Island Formation Center, saying, "If you just operate the mountain guarding formation, the jade card does not need to be refined. I told you about it last time, but it's really mysterious. The place is that the jade plate contains an ancient water art. Once it is successfully refined by a monk, you can ask the gods to come down to the truth and welcome a statue equivalent to a monk in the nascent soul realm. If it is in the river of great blasphemy fighting with people, the power of the Dhamma can be regarded as a jade pure realm. After all, this is a who was in charge of the important position of rainfall in the Ministry of Water in the Old Heaven. The official position of the is not low. The real name of the is Junqing, rain and rain, listen. It's just a big official." Qin Ping's income was in his sleeve and he had his own plan. In fact, this Yuxiang jade metal alone is estimated to be worth much more than the entire Fushui Island. He joked, "I'm not doing this deal with the Water Dragon sect. You have lost a semi-immortal treasure of water law?" Li Yuan cast his eyes and said, "What if the ordinary monks bought the Fushui Island? Will I give this thing? I must have accidentally lost it. I want to use the formation and let them find a substitute for this thing by their own ability. The great treasure of the Immortal family. What are you polite to? Besides, if you weren't willing to accept it, the jade card would have been given to you. This is a tasteless thing to me. As a great Sakam, it is not suitable to refine this thing. Just like in the officialdom, a subordinate servant of a local government office would dare to call a minister of a capital temple." Qin Pingon was silent for a moment and then suddenly asked, "It's just the way of Juanqing. Even if you refine it, the problem is not big, right?" Li Yuan smiled without saying anything. Qin Pingon immediately understood that this water official named Junqing had not fallen thousands of years ago, but those gods similar to the pleas of Ma Kushuan of Zhenwu Mountain are still under the control of the Confucian Temple. In accordance with a certain rule established by the Saints of Rites, hiding behind the scenes, continue to control part of the operation of the heaven, earth and water transportation avenue. Therefore, it is not suitable for Long Tingho, who has been in the high position in the past. Sitting in the lobby, Pei Qian and Xiaomi Nui have already been familiar with the road. Earlier they carried a bucket with a rag and worked together to clean the place. Qin Pingon said, "We just sit here for a while and we will leave immediately, so we still have to ask you for help if we have something." Li Yuan remembered something and said, "You mean the Jin Lu and Yu Lu Zhaijiao dojos in October? Didn't you give me 2 guyu money before, and you also left the booklet with your names? These 2 decades I do it every year. If this is the case, you don't have to worry about it. This matter has become an annual rule on Fushui Island. The Water Dragon sect is very concerned and I dare not neglect it at all." On the 10th day of October, the gods of the heavens, the earth and the ghosts and gods are all in their places. Most of the Yongjian vulgars gave their ancestors cold clothes and sacrificed their ancestors. Here, the water dragon cultivators will carefully cut out 5-color paper and colored clothes. Each shop will give a small stove. However, the burning of paper is customary, 2 days before and after the 10th day of October, because this will not disturb the deceased's rest, and it will make the ghosts and gods of their ancestors and other parties the most useful. The following October 15th is the day of Shuiguan relieving evil, which can help the deceased to relieve evil, and recommend to the dead to accumulate blessings. The ceremony held by the Water Dragon sect is more grand, and of course it costs more money. Except for the mountain monks from all over the continent, most of them are the generals of the Daoist dynasty to participate. Help me write down the names and native places of my ancestors and deceased. Some big dynasties with rich financial resources will make a special trip to the place when the war is over. They will make a special trip to pay homage to the heroes, pray for them, worship incense and light lamps, and accumulate blessings in the future. Qin Pingon said, "Where is the 2 grains of rain money? Let's talk about it. I have to make up how much fairy money you have helped me over the years." Back then, Qin Pingon didn't expect that he would be on the Great Wall of Jianqi and would not be able to return home for a long time. He thought that he would always be able to travel to Luzhou in the north and return to the Water Dragon sect again after a few years. Li Yuan wanted to refuse. What kind of fairy money is this little fairy money? But when he thought of the landscape rules involved in sacrificial offerings, he gave an approximate amount and asked Qin Pingon to pay out 10 more guyu money, just a lot more, no need to worry about giving less. A snowflake money. Qin Pingon directly gave 20 guyu qian. Li Yuan asked this matter about a few years, and Qin Pingon said that it would take almost 100 years. If there is a reincarnation, if the age of the vulgar sun under the mountain can be regarded as almost a lifetime, then it can be counted as 100 years. If someone reincarnated, they can continue to practice and go up the mountain again. Qin Pingon also hopes to see you again. Qin Pingon took out 10 golden talisman urns that he had prepared long ago from the records of the original pill book, and said that Li Yuan would help burn them in the Jin Urn Dojo in the future, 1 per year. Li Yuan didn't pay much attention at first, but when he first glanced at it, his complexion changed instantly, and after he was put in his sleeves, he stared blankly at the Qingshan sword fairy, who was too arrogant, and said in his heart, "Qin Pingon, why are you doing this? I have a lot of blessings, and burning a talisman every year is too frequent. This is even more taboo than the killing of the monks in the mountains. If you are not already in the Yupu realm, I will scold you if you are a mistake. My heart is crazy." Qin Pingon's eyes were bright and he said, "I only hope that sincerity will lead to spirit." Li Yuan sighed faintly in his heart and said helplessly, "How did I make you such a friend?" Qin Pingon turned his head and looked outside the house and said with a smile, "It is estimated that before we leave, Fushui Island will have to entertain guests once." Li Yuan nodded. "It's mostly Xiao Jingji. She is more willing to spend her time on welcoming and sending these things than Beizong Sunjia." Sure enough, Nanzong Xiao Jingji, together with an old woman with a faucet on crutches, visited the new owner of Fushui Island. Xiao Jingji is a monk in the Jade Profound realm. She has skill and beauty and looks like a young woman. She is dressed in a simple and elegant robe, embroidered with azurite and embroidered patterns, and made of loose buns and light makeup. The old woman is in the Yuan-Ing realm, and according to her generation she is the sister-in-law of the sovereign Sunjia. Before crossing the threshold, she intentionally or unintentionally stopped for a moment, raised her hand to adjust the sideburns, but she could only dry her fingers and brush the snow white. Qin Pingon came to the steps outside the door alone and greeted him with a smile. Xiao Jingji was here to give a gift. The person who wanted to buy the water island turned out to be an upright suzerain. She was in the Patriarch Hall before and surprised her. Because Li Yuan turned his elbow away in the Patriarch Hall, he turned from Shuijing into a black boy in Longtinghao. He didn't speak much, just a few words, one of which said that his friend is the lord of a sect on the mountain. So it is reasonable to say that Sun Jia and Xiao Jingji, you two must meet at Munudu. Then Xiao Jingji learned that this person was on the top of the mountain. Not long after he entered the sect, Xiao Jingji had a reason to be a guest here, and gave the sect master Qin a water-like spiritual treasure, called a midge shaped like a nymph. But on the mountain, it is also known as the Little Mojiao, and it is raised in a small bamboo cage woven from Qingshan bamboo with misty water. Qin Pingon declined, but in the end he was naturally disrespectful. However, this kind of material benefits are received today and sent tomorrow. Those who have a relationship are about the same as the money of the wedding banquet at the foot of the mountain. There is no one who has the advantage. For example, in future celebrations of Shuilong sect Nanzong, Qin Pingon and Luopashan naturally have to express that people can't get a gift, so what both parties really earn is actually the incense. Qin Pingan and Xiao Jingji are actually not familiar with each other at all, so that means that they have some polite words, but Xiao Jingji is good at finding words. Qin Pingan is also good at answering a small chat, not a bit blunt like 2 years of old friends. During Li Yuan's period he only interjected, saying that Brother Qin and Lu Jinglong are best friends. Xiao Jingji smiled and nodded, but his heart was ups and downs. Could it be that the foreign sword fairy who had previously asked Jinsua Yunzong with Lu Jinglong was the Ai predecessors? Xiao Jingji regretted it, and the gift was light. The old woman who had never said a word had no sect master Qin in her eyes, only Li Yuan, who looked like a long eternal young man opposite her. The last time I reunited after a long absence was in the hall of the Grand Master of the Water Dragon. At that time Li Yuan, with a little golden light condensed his figure, fell on the first seat on the right. His face was young but his spirit was withered. The black-clothed boy has already had a complete spirit. And this is the advantage of being one of the Dadu Ho-Ho and getting a Confucian temple and Shuegong great sacrifice wine in person. The Yuan-ing old woman, who has no hope of breaking through in this life, seems to be more happy than she is in the 5 realms when she sees this situation with her own eyes. The old woman has a vicissitudes of life, no matter how ugly, and a pair of eyes that will no longer be moisturized. She will still hide a lot of words in her heart. It's like a love letter that has never been sent. From the time when a girl was a girl she started to write the first word, and when the old woman was gray-haired she didn't stop writing. Not all men and women in the world will love and think. They will plant a millet in spring and harvest thousands of seeds in autumn. There may be no spring planting and autumn harvest. If you are not careful, your heart will be deserted and the wild grass will spread, but the wildfire will always burn endlessly. Born again. Finally, Qin Pingan and Li Yuan together sent Xiao Jingji and the old woman to the island ferry. After they left on the Fuzhou, Qin Pingan asked softly, "Is there a story?" Li Yuan said with blank eyes, "There is no story to tell." Walking back to the mansion together, Li Yuan smiled and said, "Don't blame me for talking too much." Qin Pingan shook his head and said, "A few words, the finishing touch, just right." Li Yuan sighed, hugged the back of his head with both hands and said, "Although Sun Jie doesn't like to deal with relationships, he won't lack the necessary etiquette. Most of them are waiting for news and then see you at Moon Yudu. Otherwise if you come to Fushui Island first, Xiao Jingzi's temper is likely to be unwilling to come." Xiao Jingzi's aunt, who seems smart, actually thinks things are too simple, and never thinks about Sun Jie's concessions and goodness on these trivial matters. Hard work. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Then let's not let sect master Sun wait for a long time." Li Yuan said with emotion, "Being the sect master, it is better to be clean and self-conscious. If you want to be considerate and considerate, it will not be easy. In the future, the bigger the family business, the more difficult it will become." He watched the rise of the water dragon sect little by little, and then divided it into the northern and southern sects step by step. Li Yuan was not so exhausted from the beginning. In fact, the water dragon sect was able to enter the sect. In his early years, whether Li Yuan was, it is a great contribution to making suggestions or doing it by himself. Li Yuan sits with a clear conscience in the top seat of the Zhu Shirtang at the right. It is only the changes over the years, and over time he gradually becomes nosy, even if he has been scolded by the real fire dragon. He couldn't help the wall, so he recognized it. Qin Pingan nodded and said, "Old liar." Li Yuan said, "Qin Pingan, you must not let Luopashan become the second water dragon sect." Qin Pingan walked slowly along the shore with his arms folded in his arms, smiling, "I will fight for it." Don't look at Li Yuan looking at the same as his own uncle Jingqing, in fact it is very different. The former is just lazy, in fact everything in his heart is clear, as for the latter he is really lacking in mind. Therefore when Li Yuan is the Longting Ho, he will only rise in the future, and will not be overwhelmed by Shenlin's Lingyuan Palace. If he is replaced by Qin Lingjun, it is estimated that there will be a big banquet every day, one after another. Field, and then suddenly found out one day what, no money? Li Yuan asked cautiously, "Since your wife is Ning Yao, then that official Qin Yin one of the 10 young people in the world?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Guess." Li Yuan stood on tiptoe, patted Qin Pingan on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Master Qin, where is the soreness? Rub it for you?" Qin Pingan raised his face and said, "Laughter, call Qin Shan." Before he could take a few more glances at Fushui Island, Qin Pingan left Longgong Cave. While riding on the Fuzhou, Qin Pingan raised his head and glanced at the big sun. According to Li Liu's leaked secret, the prototype of the big sun hung in the air is the essence of the incense from Jidu Central Temple year after year. Li Lu disapproved of this and directly gave an evaluation of the embryo is rough and unsuitable, saying that even if the water dragon Zongtime is polished for thousands of years, it will not be better than the sun and moon provoked by the shoulders of the mellow scholar Qin Chunan. Qin Pingon retracted his gaze and said to Ning Yao in his own voice, I mentioned something to Lu Jinglong earlier. For so many years, there has not been an ascendant swordsman in Luzhou in Beiju. Beiju Luzhou sword repairs like a cloud. It is logically said that among the Hauran 9 continents, there should be 1 or even 2 ascending sword repair places. One of the most important reasons is of course related to Luzhou Jianxiu rushing to the Great Wall of Jianxi in Beiju. Jianxiu either died in battle there or the road was cut off or was seriously injured. There were too many people such as Lu Jinglong's master who was an immortal at the time. Han Huizi, the former lord of the realm, had hoped to ascend to the Ascension realm as long as he stayed in Taihui Jianzong. Even if there are many sword repairs here, it is inevitable that swordsmanship will be shared equally, but there must be other reasons besides this. Ning Yao thought for a while. The Bai Chong in the north, he is so cherish his life, he must have a plan. For example, he wants to become a good ascendant sword repairman, wants to be no one before and no one in Luzhou, and then I rush to the 14th realm of sword repair in one go. In fact, as long as Ning Yao is willing to think about something seriously, her opinions are often extremely accurate. I heard that Pei Qian said before that Bai Chong and Qingliang Zong He Xiaoyang once said that he would not be able to enter the ascended realm for the rest of his life. Bai Chong would never deliberately say something sensational. This person has established a sect for many years, and he has been stagnant in the Fairyland for hundreds of years. He still only accepts one direct disciple. If I were replaced by me, I must have regarded the ascendant realm as something in the bag. It's hard work to deal with general affairs frequently. It's better to practice swords by yourself to get more long-term benefits. Bai Cheng's reputation on the Great Wall of Jianxi in his early years is not very good, but it is not bad. He is not like a man who handed his sword vaguely. The reason why he missed the previous battle of the Great Wall of Jianxi was just waiting until the wild world was hit. The old dragon city followed Tianjun Xiashi and walked to Aquarius Island together. Maybe Bai Chong was waiting, betting that all the sword repairers would lose his reputation, and he would stay in Beiju Luzhou and wait for someone to be more capable. A breakthrough opportunity for drought and flood protection. Qin Pingon nodded, lost in thought. Ning Yao looked a little awkward and said straightforwardly in his heart, I went to Jianhu Dukui just because there is Li Kai and Qin Li and Gao Yuqing, 2 younger generations from hometown. Seemingly headless, he jumped out an inexplicable sentence. Qin Pingon returned to his senses and smiled. Understood. Ning Yao smiled and said, You can't secretly record Pei Qian's account, right? Qin Pingon was puzzled. For no reason, what should I say? Ning Yao nodded and said, It turned out to be pretending to be confused. Qin Pingon was about to hug her shoulders, but Ning Yao gently pushed it away, staring at him fiercely. When the wooden seal was returned at the ferry, the smiling water dragon sect cultivator, standing beside a Beizong palm discipline cultivator, looked respectful and said something to Qin Pingon. In addition to Mu Nudu, the 3 people appeared beside the Dadu bank. They were Sovereign Sun Jie, who worshipped Wuling Pavilion in Yuanying Realm, and Bai Bai, a direct disciple of Patriarch Hall. Qin Pingon first sent a letter to Kaik Mansion at the ferry crossing Feijian, and then Yufeng went to see the Sovereign Sun Jie. Qin Pingon actually recognized the female cultivator who was personally handed down by the suzerain, and also knew that she was from the rich family of Fuyu Kingdom. The reason for her deep memory was not because she had seen it twice before and after, but because she owned a set of 18 water dragon ancestors. There was also a Guqin named Sanxia that was given to him. Bai Bai once played vigorously with Sun Qing of Kaik Mansion in that secret site. Bai Bai did not recognize the old monk, who hugged a bamboo tree and did not let go. The gift from the suzerain Sun Jie was a pair of ox roar fish only found in the forbidden area of the deep lake of the water dragon sect. This is a real once-in-century encounter and is extremely rare. The key is that Sun Jie is very sincere and directly sent a pair, which is even more rare. Therefore even Li Yuan was a little stunned. After all, if he was not careful, it was not just the Shuolongzong that produced the cowfish. Therefore Qin Pingon took the initiative to say, Sect Master Sun, in the future if there is something that is useful, I implore Feijian to spread the faith of Aquarius Island to Luapa Mountain. We will not shirk if we can help. It is not only because the gifts are expensive that Qin Pingon has said, but also because of the Jin Yu Zhai Jiao within the Longgong cave. Sun Jia clasped his fists to thank him and then couldn't help asking, but the Luapa Mountain next to Piyun Mountain? In the previous meeting hall, Li Yuan only said that this person was a suzerain, but he didn't say that he was the root of the mountain. However, Sun Jia should only be regarded as the kind words of the other continent's sovereign. Not too serious, after all, neither side is within the same continent. The monks of the Water Dragon sect always behave in a proper manner, and don't have grudges with people. Besides, the mountain allies of the Water Dragon sect are not only Duckweed Sword Lake and Dian Chongxian Department. Qin Pingon smiled and nodded. I have some personal friendship with Wei Shanjun and I have a lot of hilltops in my family. I was lucky enough to join the sect before and Wei Shanjun contributed a lot. Wu Lingting's heart suddenly felt no wonder it turned out to be Weibo the Piyun Mountain which was near the great mountain monarch of Beiyue. This Water Dragon sect who was born in Yishio still doesn't know where his direct disciple has gone, let alone the guy in front of him who just knows this clearly. In fact, he went to the great profound capital of Qingming world. Pei Qian looked strange. One thing she has not dared to say a word to master until now, such as how Wei Yu's nickname came from. Millet grains are not only lost in their own Laopao Mountain which is not as famous as Wei Shanjun's Piyun Mountain, but also very happy for Wei Shanjun. It is incredible. The reputation of Piyun Mountain is as great as a fairy, and it has all floated to the Water Dragon sect. Here comes the edge. After Xiaomin made up her mind to go home she had to talk to Wei Shanjun, happy eating more melon seeds. Afterwards the group rushed to the Skeleton Beach, but before going to Pima Zong Mui Mountain, Qin Pingon took Ning Yao and the others around the road, and first went to Nanshan Temple which is located at the southernmost point of the continent. The white-haired boy waited outside and the latter nodded. After all, it was a Buddhist temple. It had the identity of the official genealogy of the Qingming world before it was alive, but now it is also a transfiguration demon. No matter what status, it is not suitable to enter the temple to burn incense. Nanshan Temple is paved with a shrine to the sea, and there is a statue of Guanyin Bodhisattva. Pei Qian took off the bamboo box, put the trekking stick and knelt down. The millet grains kowtowed together with Pei Qian. Qin Pingon held the incense in both hands, held it high above his head, closed his eyes and silently made a wish in his heart. Ning Yao might have a wish. After that, Qin Pingon planted 2 Bodhi trees in a place called Miaojing Mountain. Outside Nanshan Temple, the white-haired boy looked up at the statue of Bodhisattva, hesitated, closed his eyes, folded his hands together and prayed for someone. Hopefully. Trekking mountains and rivers, beautiful scenery. Reunited after long absence, so we are fine. Burning incense in the temple is what you want. A foreigner, it's a festive season. Today outside the shop in Qilong Lane, a rain curtain seemed to be pulled up. The blind old Daoist was lying on the counter and the boy in Tsingy stepped on a small bench. The 2 good brothers drank some wine and beat their teeth. In the early years, Pei Qian, who was a little black charcoal girl, was still in school at the time. Whenever it rained he would take millet grains and step on the rain on the steps. Pei Qian called the Dragon Gate by her name. Qin Lingjun felt naive so he only walked with them once. The 2 brothers chatted and talked about the difficulty of practicing in the mountains. Qin Lingjun wiped his mouth and said with emotion, "Brother Jiao, I have been on the road to practice in this life. The qualifications are so good. What's the ups and downs? In this small town there have been a few serious dangers and I was almost beaten up in daylight. Now I think about it, as bold as I am still a little scared." He scolded Wan Qiong in person, patted Lu Qin on the shoulder and openly called the senior Cui on the 2nd floor of Banxilu, one by one, which one is not a feat. Uncle Qin was not willing to say more. Qin Lingjun and Jiaxing's wine bowl touched, drank it all, raised one hand and stuck his fingers together. "Thanks to my deep blessing and my own cleverness, I can alleviate danger every time. Seriously, if I am not smart enough just a little bit, it's about to hang. Don't think about it, as long as there is such a carelessness. In this Beiyue boundary where the dragon and the tiger are hidden, it is estimated that there will be no small white strips in the Yujianglang, the little dragon king on the fallen mountain." Qin Lingjun raised the wine bowl. "It's a thing of the past that heroes don't mention the bravery and lofty ambitions of the past. Both our brothers are mixing well now, so we have to mention a bowl." Jiaxing accompanied Qin Lingjun to drink another bowl. and found that there was not much leftovers on the counter with wine and vegetables. So he immediately opened up his voice and asked the apprentice to go to the back kitchen to prepare 2 small dishes. Then the old Taoist said with emotion, "None, let's talk about the current realm of Jinking's brother. I only talk about the strategy of Jinking's brother. Brother, I've traveled all over the continent and the rivers and lakes. I've only seen it in my life. It's good to be outstanding. What if you ask?" Qin Lingjun immediately poured a bowl of wine for Zhou Xian and then said, "What is it?" "Brother, you said I am too modest and I always like to betray myself. My master persuaded me to change and I changed everything. But come, so it's harder to see your own strengths. Zhou Xian doesn't need to type any scribbles, and sincere words and heartfelt words need to be brewed. It's been in the drink for a long time," took a sip of the wine and said, "The average person can't see the goodness at all. It's just such a hidden good. As the old saying goes, the first-class wise man must have if you are a fool, you must not let others take a casual look. If you feel clever and more mindful, then you will fall behind, but Jinking's brother is not. He usually doesn't show up at all. When a critical juncture is encountered, the man will be responsible. Shurqing Mansion, the loyal spirit of the world, the spirit of heroism, a burst of brains floods, cannot stop it, right?" Qin Lingjun's chicken pecked at rice. Yes, it must be." He curled his lips and said with a smile, "Chao Sunny was assigned to Tong Yezhou because he couldn't speak and didn't meet the style of our Luapa mountain, so pitiful. Zhou Xian held a bowl in one hand and nodded in the other hand. "You are knowledgeable and can't speak. How can this be done? Brother Jingqing, this matter actually has to blame you. You are on the mountain, so why don't you talk to him more? Chao Qingqing, this baby is a very knowledgeable seed of reading, otherwise he would not be a proud student of the mountain master. What is slightly lacking is that these people who do not teach in the book are so sophisticated. Brother Qin, tell yourself, do you have to blame you? Hey, I really blame me for saying that. Then our 2 brothers will go again." The 2 brothers in the shop seemed to be able to drink every time without a word, and they were considered unique. Under the eaves of the door, Jiang Shangzhen in a blue shirt and long gown, Cui Dongshan in a snow-white robe, and a girl named Peanut. Although the 3 of them did not show their heads at the door, they had actually been standing outside listening to the chattering inside for a long time. Jiang Shangzhen admired him. "Let's ride Longxiang, this old brother Jia. If you don't speak, you will be a real person and will not show your face. When you speak, you will be a good chat." Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "Let's enter the shop later. The old fairy Jia will only be more able to chat." Jiang Shangzhen said, "People who can see can often live but don't understand. This old brother Jia is blind but understands, so he can live transparently." Cui Dongshan nodded and knelt down. The young man in white with a red mole on his forehead looked at the gray rain curtain outside the eaves of the shop. Jiang Shangzhen smiled and asked, "When will Mr. Zhu and the teacher break the border?" Cui Dongshan shook his head, stretched out his palm to catch the rain and said, "It's hard to tell." Peanut, the girl, has been helping Cui Dongshan next to hold an umbrella, and glanced at the middle-aged man with frosty temples. He was really weird. Both can say that the unintentional words hurt the most, and the pain of the sword halberd makes the listener only hate you. On the way to this Luapa mountain, he would have offended a mountain fairy who happened to meet. The woman stepped on the water while walking on the water, spinning a bamboo flute with her finger. He asked loudly on the bank whether the girl's name was Xianxia. The woman turned her head and looked puzzled. He obviously didn't know why he asked. He said with a smile, "Girl, if you are not called Xianxia, why are you late in my life?" Peanut saw clearly the fairy who was mostly cultivating in the mountains, was so annoyed that he almost had to hit someone. He took a deep breath and ignored him. He just turned and hurried away from the wind. As a result, the man was still over there with emotion. When she ran, she bumped against the deer and my heart felt like a deer. Cui Dongshan stood up, crossed the threshold and entered the shop. His 2 snow-white sleeves flew up. He laughed and said, "Oh hey, I'm drinking, won't it make the old gods happy?" Old Immortal Jia shivered, then lowered his head and shrank his shoulders. His old face bloomed with a smile, and he bent over and rubbed his hands and said, "Mr. Cui, Chief Show, they are all here, this is good. I just drank and was wondering why. I don't understand why. Turn the almanac this morning and say that there will be noble people coming." Compared with the drinking and farting of the 2 uncles in the shop, the old cook is now in the empty Huimeng. A large mansion is being built on the hill. The construction has been started for a long time. This cook who works on the Luapa mountain will come here almost every day. Many things will be done personally because the rain is lingering and it is not suitable to continue ramming the soil, so we temporarily stop working. At this moment, Zhou Xian squats under the eaves and chats with an old fairy master on the mountain. The latter glances at it. At the unfinished square in front of him, Zhou Xian, who is said to be the butler of Luopishan, smiled and said, "Mr. Zhou, if I am not mistaken, your unique craftsmanship came from the palace, right? There are those 8 masterpieces in the palace at the foot of the mountain. The larger the dynasty, the more sophisticated it is. The process is cumbersome and the vassal country is less rough. The old Immortal master relied on this bowl to eat. The building of the Dali companion capital and the reconstruction of the old dragon city to the south were all involved. There was also a mountain mansion on Xianxia mountain earlier, so I am no stranger to these. You need to learn from the best of 100 schools and strive for perfection, but there are a lot of things. It's really the first time I saw it, some words, or even the first time I heard it. This is a bit strange." Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Compared with the old Hong's skills on the mountain, my hearsay about the official style of the mountain below is not worth mentioning. At most, it is doing some icing on the cake. The old Hong does not complain about me. It's already a big belly." The old man laughed and said, "Mr. Zhou is too humble." Zhou Xian picked up the wine bowl and said with a smile, "A good thing always sounds good when someone says it." The old man gently bumped the bowl with him, nodding his head and saying, "Mr. Zhou has many witty words. So he especially likes to chat with Zhou Lian. Their business is regarded as earning money on the mountain with their heads down. In fact, they are no different from the farmers at the bottom of the mountain. When they arrive on the mountain, they are often not regarded by the masters of genealogy. Even if the face is polite, it is only due to the other party's style, tutoring and etiquette. Only on the side of Luopa mountain I met the butler Zhou Lian, which was very different. The matter of ramming the soil during this period of time has to be simple or extremely difficult. And Mr. Zhou from the Luopa mountainside chose the latter. Not talking about the immortal methods, just different. The soil layer needs 7 or 8 layers. Lime soil, clay, broken bricks and pebbles, alternately to prevent moisture and stop the building from sinking. Layers of soil are hit 3 times first and then the soil is emptied. Full of meteors in the eye after the dry ramming, it is falling into the water, spinning, ramming, pouring the glutinous rice juice and surviving, and many of the soil in this even Zhou Lian personally dug from various hills and then mixes, removes the soil in addition to the work, the wood-made ink fountain line, the bamboo pen cut line, the shavings and tenon, the stone-made large stone flattened, and the axe. It seems that there is nothing that Zhou Lian can't. It's just that the old master thinks again that being able to be a housekeeper for a Zhongzi head immortal family, and some personal abilities, is not too incredible. Zhou Lian glanced at a young man in the distance, Jiang Chu, who was the only Fulu monk in Luopa mountain besides the owner of the mountain. In addition, this person came from the Great Wall of Jianqi, so no matter who he was on the mountain, he was very kind to Jiang Chu. "You are polite." After the young man got a copy of the talisman cheats, he wanted to focus on practice. Zhou Lian didn't let him fulfill his wish. Almost every time he came to Huimeng mountain, he would take Jiang with him. When he came and went, Jiang Chu was a little irritable. Zhou Lian just smiled and told him that if a person can only practice behind closed doors, he would not know how to practice. Regardless of whether it was the big steward in his heart or the young man who really listened to the truth, after that, Jiang Chu no longer complained. He followed Zhou Lian to oversee the work again and again, and he would also help out. Seeing that the rain didn't stop, Zhou Lian said goodbye and took Jiang down the mountain. Each holds an umbrella and walks slowly. Zhou Lian has a rickety figure, a pair of cloth shoes are stained with mud, and he smiled and said, "Jiang, have you ever thought that life is like layers of rammed earth? When it is stepped heavily on, the foundation can support a beautiful building. Do you think that the house that protects us from the wind and rain? Yes, down the mountain, but not on the mountain. Only the heart is like the earth to carry everything. Therefore, a person with a kind heart is a person who proves the way." Zhou Lian stopped and turned around. Jiang Chu had to turn around and look around. Zhou Lian pointed to a high roof. After that, the roof ridge tiles are like connecting the earth and the sky. Jiang Chu, who had never read a book in his hometown, actually didn't quite understand, but he heard the expectations in Zhou Lian's words, so he nodded and said, "Mr. Zhou, I will think about these words more later." Zhou Lian turned the palm of his hand upside down and smiled. "Don't work hard with your heart, just learn the spirit of the An man in your eyes, but you have done it backwards. Go Jiang, in the long run you won't be successful. Yes, it's also hard to learn." Jiang Chu was silent, still couldn't understand and didn't dare to pretend to understand. Zhou Xian turned back down the mountain and asked, "Do you know why I want to tell you this?" Jiang Chu said, "I don't want me to take a sidetrack on the mountain. In the end, I just lived up to Mr. Chen's expectations." Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Where is the problem?" Jiang answered, "I shouldn't patronize the practice of immortal family magic." Zhou Xian couldn't help laughing. Jiang Chu became more and more nervous. Zhou Xian smiled and said, "The mountain lord who brought you up to the Luopa mountain and the hermit of the Great Wall of Sword Qi will not look down on Jiang Chu and Zhang Jiazhen." Why would Jiang Chu look down on Zhang Jiazhen? Jiang Chu was sweating for an instant, his joints were white with his umbrella. He wanted to say he didn't, but he didn't dare to say so. Zhou Xian said, "It will be done slowly in the future. Making mistakes is not a matter of a short while, and correcting mistakes is also not a matter of a day or two." Jiang Chu nodded vigorously. Zhou Xian said indifferently, "Remember, going up the mountain is not easy, but going down the mountain is even more difficult." Today Lu Xianying brought a girl with a round face. She was wearing a blue-printed dress. In Lu Xianying's view, she was not a village girl at all. Everyone was very pretty. The two left the riverside shop together and went to Lu Xianying's ancestral house, saying that they wanted to show her something. Because of the rain, they all wore hats. Under the pseudonym Yu Qianyu's credit month, after Lu Xianying opened the door, she took off the hat and shook it gently outside the door. Before entering the door, she saw the cabinet with painted golden flowers at a glance. According to Howren World, Bien's elegant saying is called Bagujia. Lu Xianying took off the hat, leaned against the table, folded his arms around his chest and said with a smile, "Back when Chen Pingon and Ning Yao came here, Ning Yao also had a good eye, and directly opened his mouth to buy this cabinet with me. I'm not willing. Ning Yao, I must know my younger siblings. If you really want to talk about it, I can be regarded as the month-old of both of them. In fact, the truth is that this is not the case at all." Back then, Ning Yao just reminded Lu Xianying that the cabinet was not valuable, but don't easily sell the inlaid mural with golden osmanthus hanging on the moon. Lu Xianying didn't care much at that time. At that time, according to Qin Pingan's guess, this object was mostly the ancestor of Lu Xianying's old Lu family. From the stream of the year, only the golden yellow snakestone was selected, crushed and glued together and finally drawn into a picture. A golden laurel tree just in time for the full moon. Lu Xianying looked at the girl, then at the mural and said to himself, "It's a match made in heaven." She carried the hat in her hand and stared at the mural. She didn't look back for a long time, as if she hadn't heard Lu Xianying's words. She turned her head and asked, "Will you wait until Chen Pingon comes back and you will go to Xingyang Mountain soon?" Lu Xianying nodded. On the side of Miss Yaya, she had talked about this a long time ago and she had nothing to hide. Even Lu Xianying said about practicing swords in her dream. In fact, many things about the month on credit are counted as one sentence. Lu Xianying said that she has heard it, but when asked about Jian Zhengyangshan, the month on credit is indeed more concerned. She asked, "Is the chance of winning a big deal?" Lu Xianying rubbed his chin. "I heard that the old ancestor who moved to the mountain is broken again." Xieyu was stunned. She was thrown directly to the town. However, she was extremely jealous of this little treasure island, which was able to stop the sea and the wild army, especially when she heard something. "Old ancestor?" she asked curiously. "Ascension realm?" Lu Xianying froze for a long time. She looked serious. "Then you have to be more careful." Lu Xianying smiled and nodded. "Okay." At Kaik Mansion, I received a Feijin letter from Mu Nudu of Shuilong Zone. In the letter, the Master Chen Shan said that he had helped find 3 famous guest qings, namely Xianfeng Yuan Lingdian and Zhou Xian. Department of Yunshao Palace Yang Hojue, Duckweed Sword Lake Sword Repair Rongchang. There is a true legend of the fire dragon who is regarded as an immortal cultivation base in Beiju Luzhou, a second-in-command old immortal master who is responsible for the specific matters of the Diyun Chongxian Department and Yunshao Palace, and a Yuanying realm who is said to be about to break through. Jinxiu. Sun Qing and his disciple Lu Guibao had just returned to the mountain. After Sun Qing put down the letter, he looked at Wu Yu and wondered, "Did you use a beauty trick against Qin Shanju? Otherwise, why should Qin Pingon be so enthusiastic as if he was hiring Kiching for his own hilltop?" He sent 3 mountain bosses directly to the little Kaik mansion in one breath, which is a fuel-saving lamp. It is really not everyone can ask for it. In the future, the cultivators of Kaik mansion with such 3 well-known guest servants, Wouldn't they still have to walk sideways on Beiju Luzhou? Wu Yu smiled and said, with Ning Zhenxian, do I dare to use beauty tricks? The teacup that Ning Yao had drunk in the tea shop before, Wu Yu had already cherished it and felt that it was a bit wrong, so he put away Xianxia's one together, but it still felt like something was wrong. Wu Yu did. Simply collected all the teacups from the guests of Luopa Mountain. Sun Qing said, a pity. I would not go out if I knew it and missed Ning Zhenxian. Lu Guibao sighed and looked at his master with a vague expression. What a rare opportunity. I would not accompany you to see Mr. Lu if I knew it. Wu Yu smiled and said, nothing, your masters and apprentices worry about you, I am happy with mine. When I arrived at Pima sect in a house where Qin Pingon was familiar with Maishan, I met Zhu Quan, who had resigned as the suzerain, and of course Du Wenxi and Pang Lanxi, two of his own worship. The sword-bearing immortal master Guiqi, after learning that the sword-backed woman was actually Ning Yao, slapped the table and laughed. The realm is high and the person is beautiful. Fortunately, I am not good-looking, so I can't be jealous. The top sect of Zhong Tushenzhou was known about Ning Yao's ascendance with his sword, and the upper Middle-earth sect that was wearing hemp sect was one of them. Qin Pingon was about to laugh, but he couldn't laugh immediately. Because Zhu Quan took a big sip of alcohol on his own, he laughed and cursed. There are a few old people here who are not ashamed, because the last time I partnered with Qin Pingon to intercept and kill Gao Qing, the ghost is obsessed, and everywhere I say I have a leg with Qin Pingon. Ning Yao, don't think too much about it. There is nothing at all. I can't look down on a scholar like Qin Pingon, and Qin Pingon can't look down on a girl with a big waist and a small waist. Ning Yao smiled without nodding or shaking his head. Du Wenxi smiled bitterly and Pang Lanxi gloated. The white-haired boy lay on the table and slapped it hard. Millet Grains scratched his face, boldly said, Aunt Shu, a good-looking mountain lord of my family, it's not that anyone who looks good will like it, it's not uncommon for them to look good or not. Qin Pingon was relieved. After that, the group took the intercontinental ferry of Pima Zone, went around a small part of Beiju Luzhou and returned to Aquarius. In the night, Qin Pingon was lying on the railing in a peaceful mood, drinking wine leisurely, the bright moon, the same moonlight shining through the sages, literati, celebrities, swordsmen and hawks shining through the window, the scholar, the beauty of the fence, the man on the water, the woodcutter in the mountains, the emperors and generals who stayed sleepless overnight, the snoring traffickers and pawns, the high cornices of the mansion, the low ridge tombs and the yellow paper of the Lantern Festival, Qingming Festival, the Spring Festival couplets at the New Year of the moon cakes have illuminated the white clouds, green mountains, green water and yellow flowers that no one has left for thousands of years. Ning Yao came to Qin Pingan's side, the sword box was placed on the table and she was lying on the railing with him in a daze. She didn't seem to have to think about anything. Qin Pingan turned his head quietly, looking at her eyelashes. Ning Yao didn't seem to know that he was peeking at himself. Outside the ferry, the water and the moon were one color after another. On the ferry, the fair-skinned woman had only reddish ears. The color was like a small white bowl of carmine red in the porcelain of the Supervision Bureau. When Ning Yao turned his head, he actually fell asleep. Next time you come to visit Luzhou in Beiju, if you don't have to hurry and return home in a hurry, Qin Pingon may go to more places such as the Ghost Axe Palace where Diu is located. If you want to hear his arena, go to Sui Songyun Lake next to Jiaqing in a prefectural city's temple in Fuyu State. I once saw the city's god's night trial in person. In the waterside temple with ancient cypresses planted for thousands of years, Qin Pingon actually left behind. The breeze and the bright moon move on the branches, and it is a verse like, the sword fairy and the sword light. I have to go to the Sasua Villa in Wuling where I have a drink of thin plum wine. There is a martial artist with the pseudonym Wu Fengjia. He once said that he was big and the gods got out. When he was young, he used 2 fists to disperse the gods of more than 10 countries and expelled them. There are also the Shape Cry Mountain, the Baby Mountain and the Thunder God's house. If these are all revisiting the old places, then Qin Pingon will naturally go to some places that have never been before. No matter how hurried the pace is, life needs to be calm. Sort of Coming Chapter 8:16. The visit to the temple and the trip to Luzhou and Beiju were very rewarding. Qin Pingon was about to count his belongings, rolled up his sleeves, sighed and rubbed his hands. Seeing that posture, it seems like a saint sitting in the small world. Zhou Mili and the white-haired boy sat next to each other, one lying on the table staring wide-eyed, waiting to see. A sick man was busy taking virtual pictures of the tabletop, and again he boarded the ship before and was settled by the hidden official ancestor Chioho. He said that he didn't like to take pictures of the table. Then take enough shots 10,000 times or he would go to Luopa Mountain. Disciples don't even think about it. Qin Pingon took out 3 things from his sleeves. They were gifts from 2 great masters of the Middle-earth Mountain in Gongda Lin to congratulate their husbands. Among them, Jiui Mountain God gave a pot of calamus, and Yanzishan Zhou Xian gave 12 box of rouge gouache, in addition to an extremely rare origami wui swallow. The white-haired boy glanced at his eyes and was not interested. He clapped the table silently with one hand and yawned with the other. He found the hidden official ancestor slanting his eyes and immediately cut the line, "Heavy treasure," which is not the treasure of Xianxia. Qin Pingon twisted the small basin with his fingers and introduced with a smile, "This pot of calamus is not big. It is actually 1,000 years old. Seeing that the little drop of water on the tip of the leaf is not there, it is all luck. Jiui Mountain still has it. After several pots of 3,000 years, the condensed water droplets are bigger, as large as a copper coin. But don't underestimate such a droplet. If it is placed at the source of a river or stream where it flows through, there will be qi growth. Maybe in towns and villages within hundreds of miles along the way, there will be a scholar of imperial examination in a small country of the vassal. Even if it cannot be named on the gold list, it can grow talent and make brilliant pens." Pei Qian asked curiously, "Master, how much is this little thing worth?" Qin Pingon said, "The income is too long, so if this thing is sold to the big sect, 20 grains are not too expensive, and the small sects don't think it is cheap to spend a single grain of rain." The white-haired boy couldn't help it and asked, "This Jiui Mountain God, the family is very poor, otherwise I would give this thing as a gift to the Holy Master?" During the celebration of the New Year's Palace, no one would dare to have such a casual meaning for the guests who came to watch the ceremony. Ning Yao smiled and said, "Things are precious, especially the things that gain in luck. You can't find them when you encounter them. Not to mention 20 grains of rain. It's really not a small amount of money." Millet Grains thought for a while and said, "We can put this pot of calamus on the lotus root blessed land, so that the fat and water will not flow out of the field." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Half and half. Those who carry water drops, the Luopa Mountain and the lotus root are half and half." Xiao Mili nodded, "Benefit the village, do good things without leaving a name, that is also excellent." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "It's also great that the right guard can think so." The Millet Grains smiled shyly. Qin Pingon lightly patted the long bamboo box containing the rouge gouache and looked at Ning Yao. She shook her head. Qin Pingon turned to look at Pei Qian, who also shook his head straight. Pei Qian suddenly asked, "Master, can I give Sister Shi, Xin Yuanji and Yuan Bao as gifts?" Qin Pingon pushed the bamboo box to Pei Qian and said with a smile, "What's wrong with this? Very good thing." Then Qin Pingon twisted the origami black-clothed swallow and said, "If it is placed on the plaque of the ancestral house or on the roof beam, it means that there will be one more incense villain in the family. The closer you are to the famous mountain, the better. Luopa Mountain is close to Piyun Mountain. Look, coincidence?" Qin Pingon looked at Ning Yao and said, "This Yanzishan woman, the monarch, is called Bitter Vegetable. Is it interesting? The little girl from the Shaoyuan dynasty, remember, the one named Zhu Mei, the little attendant next to Junbai?" Ning Yao thought for a while and nodded. It seems that Zhu Mei liked to go around Yi Yaofu later. In fact, the little girl had a good heart and her aptitude. If she remembered correctly, she had obtained a sword intent at the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "It is said that when Zhu Mei was very young, for no reason, he once wandered in Yanji Mountain in his dream and met this female mountain monarch, and the two sides concluded a contract. Such blessings, generally speaking, only in the book." Xiao Mili looked forward to, "Good man, Mountain Master, help me write a similar landscape story in the future? For example, when I dozed off in Dumb Lake when I was a child, I dreamed of Luopa Mountain." Qin Pingon joked, "Isn't that a lie?" Millet grinned, "You can handle it, the good man. The book is not written by me, I can't control whether it is deceiving or not. As for the thing that Liu's family in Ia's Hao accidentally forgot to take away, Qin Pingon intends to give it to Chao Qingqing. Later he will become the next sect master. Every time you go out, you can't hang a lot of bags on your body and go down the mountain to do business." Qin Pingon took out the 2 copybooks of Su Zi and Lu Qi and spread them carefully on the table. Millet grains gently reached out and touched the copybook, soaked in immortality, feeling deeply, Suzy Lucci the real thing. The white jade Ganoderma lucidum of the immortal Xianxia in the Jiazhengziangwen is a semi-celestial rank. If you don't know each other, Qin Pingon guesses that the future relationship between the two parties will only be more allies than the allies who signed the landscape contract. Next time I travel with Lu Jinglong to the Shenzhou of the Middle-earth, Qin Pingon has thought about what to send to meet up, and buy a set of chests at the Mountain City Pool. It doesn't need to be from the fairy house on the mountain or the palace in the palace. The simpler the better. Qin Pingon Huai held the white jade Ganoderma lucidum, and then used blindfolding techniques to instantly transform into a fairy with a cloud and water body. Yunli and his Tao Yun is still a bit like a god. Pinched Daoju with one hand and 2 fingers, looked around, changed his voice, smiled and said, Yunlu has swam far here, fellow Daoists stay for a while. Ning Yao said, it's okay to deceive you Pu. Qin Pingon smiled and removed the blindfold and put the white jade Lingji on the table. The millet grain pulled the sleeve of the short winter melon beside him, and the white-haired boy kept patting the table, turning his head and asking in confusion, why? Xiaomili looked at this unknowing little Han Han, and said a few good words to the good man, the owner of the mountain. Wouldn't it be okay? It's not tiring to pat the table. On the night cruise, Wu Shuangjiang presented a piece of posting at the time, which will be hung in the study in the future. There is also the couplet with 7 color characters, a veritable treasure. Qin Pingon will post it in the Patriarch Hall of the Xiazong of Tongyezhou. Main entrance. Lin Qingqing, a guest of the Qiu clan in Yuzhou, presented an old Qingtian yellow badge with a small landscape. However, after closing the market, the little spirit gifted the ink stone with a sensible way. Qin Pingon intends to put these 2 pieces on the bookcase on the first floor of the bamboo building. Earlier I was in Naruto Island and I owed some debts with Lu Qiqing and Madame Yan Yan. As for the intercontinental ferry that the mysterious dynasty gave away for nothing, but also took the initiative to help repair it, named Fei Yuan. At the gate of the temple, Qin Pingon had a face-to-face meeting with Mrs. Xianxia. The 2 joint bamboos he bought as well as the Qi bamboo Wuyun bamboo were sent to Nujiaoshan Ferry by Xianmi. On Xianzong's Yangyun Peak I got a Sanlang Temple Spirit Treasure Armor and a soldier's golden black armor. Water Dragon Sect, Sun Jie sent a pair of bullfish. Xiao Jingji gave a midge nicknamed Xiamagio on the mountain, which can be given to Hongxia and Yunzi respectively, and stocked near Huanghu Shanshui Mansion. It cost 80 raindrops to buy a tea island. Li Yuan presented a jade plaque of golden green rain. The ants moved and the swallows held the mud, helping Luapa Mountain to increase the family property bit by bit. According to my conscience, I, the owner of the mountain, should be very dedicated. Ning Yao reminded, the case of the guest of the Kaik Mansion is too much an exception on the mountain. As the leader of Luapa Mountain, do you have to say it again? Qin Pingon smiled and nodded, it's definitely needed. Qin Pingon had long thought about giving thanks to Kaik Mansion, and when he returned to Luapa Mountain he immediately sent a thank you gift to the 3 parties. In addition to the few cans of Xioxwanbi tea in Kaik Mansion, plus Luapa Mountain a special set of bamboo leaves and bamboo sticks, totaling 24 pieces, each with the names of the 24 solar terms, and a corresponding poem, both written in small letters with hairpins and sent to Zixuanfeng. Yuan Lingdian Chongxian Department Yang Hojue, Duckweed Sword Lake Rongchang. With a letter of thanks from Qin Pingon, the courtesy is light and affectionate. Once Yuan Lingdian enters the fairyland, his Taoism is higher and his killing power is greater, and Yuan Lingdian is most likely to become the next head of the monk at the peak of the ground, but this is just a feeling of Qin Pingon. For example, 2 times before, once to send imitation swords to Qin Pingon, and once to watch a ceremony in the Fallen Mountain, the real fire dragon showed up in Yuan Lingdian, known as the first person of Luzhou Yupu in northern Zhu. Yang Hojue, with the name Tuning Ni, has long been the real steward of the Dian Chongxian department. The key is relative to the Yupu realm. This person is extremely young, but he has high morals and can practice cultivation and general affairs without delay. It is a pity that I visited last time. The Emperor of Dian dynasty failed to see this person. Emperor Lu had heard that Kaik Mansion needed Kuqing at the time, so he recommended him without hesitation. Li Kai fought a series of battles. The sword was too ruthless. He didn't care about the fundamentals of his own avenue. The sword's heart was damaged and was extremely injured. As for the kendo climbing and stopped, Li Kai was completely bearish, more thought and energy, and turned to the door. Inner diaries then transferred to disciples to teach the Taoist profession, and as the disciple of Li Kai Kaishan, Rong Chong is the best candidate for the next master of Jianhu. Even if these three people will have the suspicion of the transitional suzerain in the future, in any case, they will still be the master of the Beiju Luzhou sect. Qin Pingon put away the belongings on the table. Pei Qian took the rice grains and the white-haired boy to leave. Ning Yao asked, "What do you say about sword refining?" Qin Pingon had a headache. The dragon slashing stone is really hard to find, and you may not be able to buy it if you find it. In Tongyi's Hao and Pei Min questioning the sword, Hin Jianshen imitated the Gu Chui Feijian pine needles, which completely shattered, and the tip of the sword was also badly damaged. Because he has a sword-raising gourd that is not bad in rank, and the cost of sword-making before is not large. After all, the 15th day of the new year is not the natal flying sword of swordsmen, so there is no shortage of dragon-cutting platform. Qin Pingon almost I haven't had a headache, but now I am about to pay my debts. Especially after becoming a sword repairman, 2 natal flying swords, namely the caged bird and Jing Zhongyue, were suddenly added, so Qin Ping's need to cut the dragon platform now is destined to be of great weight. Qin Pingon felt frightened at the thought of the immortal money needed for this matter. Moreover, Zanlongtai has always been a valuable treasure except for sword repairs that can be used to make swords, which can get twice the result with half the effort. Qi practitioners have many magical uses. The immortal monks who own this thing are almost unwilling to sell. If there is no money to borrow, who is willing to borrow? Ning Yao said, "There is nothing left in Feishing City, otherwise I will take it with me this time." Qin Pingon raised his head and asked the white-haired boy in the distance, "Is there any extra dragon slashing stone on the Sui Chu Gong side?" The white-haired boy Yao Yao replied in his heart, "Yes, Sui Chu Gong likes to collect ragged pieces. There are all kinds of treasures. There are 2 big pieces of dragon slashing stone. When the person is high, he will personally carve the guy into a pair of Daoist. Looks like he gave away the rest of the scraps casually." Qin Pingon sighed. "Then don't think about it. Then there are only 3 options at the moment: the relics of the imperial treasury of the Song family of Dai Zhenwu Mountain Patriarch Hall, and the Dragon Slayer may have this thing privately. On the mountain to the west of hometown, there is only one Longji Mountain that has been designated as forbidden by the Dai court, because Longji Mountain has a dragon cliff, which is divided into 3. Fengxue Temple, Zhenwu Mountain and Wanqiong each occupy one. Regarding the excavation of the dragon slashing platform at Longji Mountain for decades, the official ban was strict and extremely concealed. The Saint Wanqiong obtained only a small portion of the stones he collected. In fact, most of the stones were given to the Dai court, and then almost they were all taken by the Emperor Song clan to pay off debts, mainly to the Mo family. Among the most important treasures in the city built by Mo family Jizi, there is the dragon slashing platform. The 2 emperors of the Song clan of Dai have given respect to Wanqiong, the chief contributor to the country. After the war on the territory of a continent, many dragons and snakes that had quietly concealed days and day appeared one after another. But Wanqiong, the number 1 worshipped by Dali, still couldn't move. The Fengxue Temple's share had already been eaten up secretly, but the Fengxue Temple was not at all disadvantaged. He had obtained 2 lost evangelism methods that allowed direct access to the upper 5 realms, and a more profound sword. At Zhenwu Mountain, Qin Pingon did not know for the time being what he used to transport the dragon slashing stone over the years. Because of Ma Kuxuan's relationship, Qin Pingon had actually been reluctant to take the initiative to contact Zhenwu Mountain. Of course, it is not that you can't refine your sword without the dragon slashing stone. The world swordsman possesses the dragon slashing platform. But Qin Pingon hopes to refine his sword faster and to enter the fairyland faster. Ning Yao said, "Look back and ask Cui Dongshan." Qin Pingon nodded. After that, the fairy continued to go south. Qin Pingon called Pei Qian one day to teach her boxing, but did not feed her boxing. The boxing taught by Qin Pingon and Pei Qian was a boxing method created by Mother Bai of Ningfu. There is no name for the boxing method. A pure martial artist in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, to become a great master, it is almost as difficult as a sword repairer in the upper 5 realms before Aquarius. Inside the house, Qin Pingon slowly punched out and Pei Qian followed the exercise. Fist moves are dead, but the fist road in the small world of the human body is alive. A mouthful of pure qi, how to work in detail, how to cross mountains and waters, how to deploy troops and generals so that the martial arts will continue to grow and the fist will increase. Purity is the real key. Otherwise, no matter how good the punches are, they will become the martial art style of embroidered pillows. Tui Ching teaches boxing on the second floor. His words are not rough and his martial arts scores are high and low. One is that my fists and feet are heavy enough. If I decide to divide my life and death, I can send people to Gemengwen to be reborn with one punch. Fuzzy, in short, can be defeated and can be beaten, and in this there is another word, will, the most important essence. It's my reason to defeat the opponent and divide the victory or defeat. Being able to withstand being beaten, not losing a boxing, and being will, to be beaten is to help me beat my physique. Not only does not hurt the root cause, does not leave the hidden dangers of serious maladies, but also strengthens my realm. What shaking mountain fist? I only know how to pass a fist, but I can't raise a fist. The old man turns a few pages at random and there is a smell of subearth. In the early years of Zhulu learned boxing, Qin Pingon also said a few words of justice for the Xianxia boxing table. He was beaten too many times and he really didn't have the guts to say anything. He was pricked by the old man's toes and then picked so casually. The whole person hit the ceiling with his back. Really, don't have a feeling in my heart. Qin Pingon was reluctant to feed Quan Pei money in this way and couldn't bear that heart. Even to this day, Qin Pingon did not ask Pei Qian about the detailed process of learning boxing in Zhulu, and he did not dare to think about it. So many times, Qin Pingon reviews the matter in private, and feels that he really has no qualifications to teach boxing. Qin Pingon stopped his fist in the room and said, "The victory in the temple's questioning boxing session is not a big difference, but it is not only the difference in realm that Master lost to Zhou Xian. The three-story building at the end of the world is full of vitality, return to the truth and God. Zhou Xian could become at any time. In a fight between the two sides fought back and forth, but the result was obvious. Zhou Xian was injured very lightly, and that bruise was scattered within a few days. On the other hand, Qin Pingon had to be a pot of medicine for several months. This is the gap." Pei Qian was still walking and asked softly, "Master, where do you think I should break the border? Is it better to be in Tongyi's house?" Qin Pingon angrily laughed and said, "If you want to do what some of them don't, the 9 realms will be among the 10. It is a threshold. You can break the realm wherever you are as long as you can break the realm." Pei Qian said, "Master, if I break through the mountain, will I the martial arts of the old cook and the master? I have heard that it is like a boundless warrior, like fighting for a ferry. The boat is so big, whoever takes the place first, the people behind cannot board the boat." Qin Pingon directly smashed a chestnut over. "Anything can be made, but Wuxia can't make way. He asks people about the boxing and there is no one in front of him, and Wu has no one to climb to the top." Pei Qian nodded. "I see. Return to the Luopa mountain and break the boundary." Qin Pingon asked tentatively, "Already have confidence to break the bottleneck?" Pei Qian gave a hum. Qin Pingon smiled and was a chestnut again. "I have already taught boxing, so I will go back to my house to practice. Teach a hammer punch." As soon as Pei Qian left, the white-haired boy swaggered over to stop by. The white-haired boy was really idle on the ferry, and recently he took the initiative to start business with the hermit ancestors. Following the old rules in the prison, he wanted to collect another grain of money. As for the collection, how to use it, it hasn't figured out yet. For example, on the Tawadu tea shop, it helped the robe temporarily named Waterway, and made up a lot of content. The ancestor of the hidden official still talked about loyalty, and did not take it seriously to offset the merits, but let it earn a small summer money, and the two parties have agreed if this temporarily unachievable robe in the future outside the temple in the vast sales in Europe are good, and one can be added. In addition, it began to write a fist score, named Baijia Fanquan, and felt very elegant. On the top of the fist sheet, there are more than 30 fist moves of the Qingming World Territory Wufu's mastery skills, many of which are assassins that have been lost. Make a little summer money again. On the cover of the Book of Boxing, the 4 words Baijia Fanquan are extremely huge, and beside the feet of the boxing word, there are extremely subtle 2 words Book 1. Qin Pingon just pretended not to see it, pretending that he didn't know it. If there is the first volume, there will naturally be the middle and lower volumes. According to the demon's usual style of doing things, there may also be the upper middle volume. Volume 2. Look, don't you get half a grain of rain money? Of course, Qin Pingon would not let her make 5 small summer coins so easily based on boxing scores alone. Is there such a good Zhou Xian in the world? Don't you feel bad about money? There are 10 wild repairs in the Qingming world that are not seen by Yujing. They are the rice thief who is by the side, the rolling red hand who changed his life for the monk without authorization, and whoever spends money can borrow it with the porter of a certain realm, walking in the sun and carrying the coffin. The envoy of the mountain patrol who unknowingly steals the luck of the mountains and waters, the dressing female officer who can dredge the context of the human body, specifically for the pure martial arts knife hunter, the one character teacher who can quietly compile the secrets of the diversion gate, and there is also the corpse of the immortal. Chinese. Regarding their avenues and routes, the white-haired boy wrote another booklet, earning a little summer money for nothing. Qin Pingon sat at the table silently studying the Confucian writing breaking order, which is exactly how to get off the boat in the night ship's landscape character cage. While flipping through a few very thick books, the white-haired boy probed his brain and glanced at it as if it was Xingyang. The spy on the other side of the mountain was not interested in this and asked in a low voice, "Ancestor of the hidden official, in the future we will have our own landscape mansion report and Jinghua Shuiyue, can I be the leader?" Qin Pingon didn't look up. "No discussion, don't think about it. Your qualifications are too low, just an anonymous handyman disciple suddenly occupying a high position, it is easy for others to have ideas." In the past, the 72 Confucian Academy of Confucianism was under the supervision of the Xianxia Mansion Report on each continent, and there was not much restraint. There were special gentlemen and wise men in the academy who were responsible for collecting the mansion newspapers on the hills of each continent. All immortal families will raise idlers, and even many sects at the head of the clan are too lazy to take care of this matter. Some sects such as Beiju Luzhou Patafeng Taihui Sword Sect and Duckweed Sword Lake were not set up. However, Daoist Chongxian Department Water Dragon Sect Chunlapu, these immortal families that are most closely connected to the Xianxia dynasty, value this matter extremely seriously. The white-haired boy bowed his head and wiped his palms across the tabletop and said dully, "I thought the handyman disciple was just a joke." Qin Pingon reminded, "When you arrive at Luapa Mountain, you are not allowed to spy on people's hearts at will. Once I find out, don't blame me for not remembering old feelings." The white-haired boy is still wiping the table over there. The hidden official ancestor said what he said, "I am a helpless foreigner, what can I do?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Don't pretend to be pitiful on my side, don't worry, you need a lot of planning behind the scenes for the location of Tongis's next clan." The white-haired boy raised his head with a vigorous expression, "Give me a big official, no problem with a false title." Qin Pingon thought for a while. "In the future I will make a special trip to set you the title of Deputy Sect Master?" The white-haired boy laughed and said, "A word is definite. The Intercontinental Ferry is about to enter the boundaries of Aquarius." Pei Qian secretly found Qin Pingon that day and asked, "Master, when will you marry your madam?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "At the temple I have already greeted my husband, and my husband will come to Luapa Mountain only when Fei Jian sends a message." In fact, at the Jinzuan Ferry in Luzhou, Beiju, Qin Pingon had already quietly sent a secret letter saying when he would return to his hometown. Pei Qian asked in a low voice, "This kind of thing is to be talked to the teacher face to face?" Qin Pingon said helplessly, "Of course Master thinks, haven't you noticed that Master drinks every 3.5 times? You are emboldening yourself. No matter what, I promise you will talk before your husband shows up." When Qin Lingjun saw the big white goose at the Chaotu shop in Qilong Lane earlier, he immediately found an excuse to slip away. Old Immortal Jia was in charge of hospitality, brought a few pots of wine, and personally cooked a few wine dishes. Cui Dongshan was standing on the small bench, Jiang Shangzhen was standing behind the counter, and the girl Peanut looked at the colorful pastries, a little greedy. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "When I think of my husband going to visit the water house in person, I feel a little distressed for the Chongdan River water god empress." Jiang Shangzhen asked curiously, "Xingshi asks the crime? Will it be over? Seems that we are overwhelming." This kind of thing, he Jiang, a woman who has a good relationship with women, and as the chief worshipper, should be relieved of the sorrows of the mountain lord. He quietly went to the water mansion to visit the god of water empress, and just a few glasses of wine before the flowers. Save effort and not let others talk. Cui Dongshan rolled his eyes and said, Who is my husband, a scholar? What kind of slaughter is it, such a terrible sight? What kind of teacher asks what crime? Distant relatives are not as good as neighbors, and the husband is just stopping by like the Chongdan River Water Temple for some gray activities. The husband only needs to pick one of the small things at random, and then chat with the water empress face to face and finally come to a conclusion. There seems to be something wrong here. Then everything is enough. Face has been given to her, and Luopishan has also shown sincerity to let go of the past. She is not stupid and she must understand what my husband said. Anyway, it has little to do with her, but afterwards, from the officials of the waterhouse to the temple, the 3 educators who are skilled in earning money over there will have a hard time. It's about the same number as Qin Pingon and Cui Gongzhuang in Yangyunfeng. They'll stare at you. You stare at a large group of people under your hand. The people below do not follow the rules. If I accidentally bump into you and hear that, I can't be stunned with them, so I have to take you. This is a very clear context and it is talking about a very simple truth. Government experience, public practice, where is not the world, where is the officialdom? Cui Dongshan took out a booklet. When the country was at its peak, Dali once recompiled the golden and jade genealogy of the gods of mountains and rivers within one continent, and divided them into 9 ranks. First, looking at the posture, it must always be suspended because the 5 sacred mountains including Piyun Mountain are only ranked second. The Dada Duke of Chidu has a temporary position vacant, but the monk on the mountain knows that he should only choose one, or just like Jidu in the north, whether he chooses 2, it will be the second highest position. The mountains of the 5 sacred princes rank third. Yanghua, the of water on the Tiefu River, is the only of water among the 3 in Dali. In addition, there is the Qiantang River located in the southeast of Izhou, and a piece of Yongjiang in the territory of the old Zhuing dynasty. The water classic compiled by the old Li has clouds, and there is water in all directions called Yong. When Cui Dongshan and Jiang Shangzhen traveled to the Bailudu in Jingyang Mountain before, they met a group of dragon cultivators who had a lot to do with the Qiantang River. Then there are the One Nation city gods in the capitals of various countries, but the ranks are very different. The capital city gods of the Dali dynasty ranks third, and all major vassals have the 4th and 5th countries. There are not many landscape deities that can rank among the 3 in the territory of a continent. The of water in the Embroidery River is 4. Chongten River leaves Xuqing Yuye River god Li Jin, both are only 5. The most numerous land gods, Hebo Hippo, are in the bottom 3, and they are still under the jurisdiction of the boss mountain and river god. Promotion and relegation are still on this road, but the county town temple and the martial temple have the power of supervision. On the contrary, the gods of mountains and rivers have the same for the city gods at all levels. Jiang Shangzhen smiled and said, "This old Lu Shangshu unfortunately is not a cultivator." Cui Dongshan said helplessly. He even refused to try to become A with the court, saying that he is a scholar like him, and he can't stand the pain of being scolded by himself. No matter what he looks like, he will permeate people when he listens. Instead of suffering, he will disappear. It's better to close your eyes and turn the sky into darkness. This life will be pulled down. The person responsible for compiling the family tree number for the Dali court is the official book of the rights of Dali accompanying capital, an old scholar, Lu Qingfeng. Rumor has it that this pioneering move by the Dali imperial court was praised by the sages of the temple. It is very likely that it will be promoted throughout the entire Hauran world. It will no longer follow the self-discipline of the countries of the continent. The territory is uplifted and demoted at will. The most important thing is the moral merits of mountains and rivers, which will be the most critical item in the evaluation. Instead of just looking at the golden body realm, it has a vast jurisdiction and many hills. In short, hills can be high and big rivers can be low. Moreover, the order of landscapes is no longer a rule, making it impossible for the gods of all parties to lie down on the books of merit. Jiang Shangzhen said, "It's a pity." Cui Dongshan sighed and closed the booklet. This Mr. Lu has been an official all his life after leaving the study. It is fine to take a rest and rest. Jiang Shangzhen said curiously, "What did you always want to say to your husband? Still can't say it now?" Cui Dongshan shook his head. "I used to wait and see, but now it's unnecessary." Jiang Shangzhen smiled and said, "Then I have to drink more small wine, listen to it." Cui Dongshan nodded. "You and your husband met in Uwafudi. My husband was not at a high level at the time. How do you think you are walking in a river and lake where enemies are on all sides? Jiang Shang really thought for a while, extremely careful and safe. Caution is the cause and security is the result. Cui Dongshan sighed. This is the first time my husband left his hometown. That's why he has always felt that he, a person who has never read a book, is so cautious when he first walks far away and walks the rivers and lakes. What about others? What about more experienced people who have read a lot of books? So this leads to a result. In certain things Mr. will be a bit like Xing Juzhong. Jiang Shangzhen suddenly said, smart people, even if they deal with good and evil, they see it very clearly. It is easy to find the context and only look down on people who have brains and don't need it. Jiang Shangzhen immediately changed his words. It's not that I look down on it, it's that I can't understand it. Cui Dongshan shook his head. I just look down on it, there is nothing bad to admit. It's just that the gentleman's life will still be kind, the more purely weak, the more willing to give pure kindness, but during this period it is like there is another gentleman. Watching everything coldly. Jiang Shangzhen took a sip of his wine. If this is put on the grounds of truth in addition to stricter self-discipline, it is just as easy to demand good people and good deeds. Fortunately, Qin Pingon is just so thinking and will not talk to others about what to do. But in the long run there will be questionable. Cui Dongshan nodded and said, Mr. did not realize this. For example, in the depths of his heart Mr. will naturally reject those chivalrous actions in romance novels, and even dislike many actions that seem to be chivalrous, because he will feel that it is far from enough, leaving a lot of hidden dangers and even a mess with a worse ending. Little Aquarius and Pei Qian will look at them with gusto, but in the eyes of the husband, even if you turn it over, you will only feel. Jiang Shangzhen answered, a house with air leaks on all sides and the sky is freezing cold. Cui Dongshan took a sip, turned his head and looked at the gray rain curtain outside the shop and muttered, but who tells us that the hero has done a good thing and has to do it to the end? It has to take a long time to care for the weak who are out of trouble. Is there such a reason? No. If everyone is like this, good people will hesitate more and more and good things will become rarer and rarer. This world has its own laws and keeps running and everyone has their own path to follow. This is the way of the world. The old scholar said that the way of the world is the way we walk. What is easy to walk, difficult to walk, easy to walk is wrong and difficult to walk is right. The so-called luck means that the road is good and easy to walk. Yes, the so-called misfortune is difficult and wrong. Cui Dongshan dipped his finger in the wine and drew 4 lines on the table from low to high and said in turn, bad things, wrong things, no mistakes, good things. This is what the husband has in mind, the correct order of high and low. Jiang Shangzhen glanced at him and sighed. Qin Pingon was wrong. There are no mistakes. It is much harder than a simple good thing. Cui Dongshan nodded. That's it. 2 pairs of silence. Cui Dongshan did not drink and asked softly, then why does the sir think so? Jiang Shangzhen said, pessimistic. Cui Dongshan nodded and said, Mr. has the hope to travel far, but Mr. from children to teenagers and now, is always pessimistic. All the dreams of Mr. He will not hesitate to work hard for all of his dreams, never hesitate to work hard, but I know in my husband's mind he has always been like building a snowman in the summer. Jiang Shangzhen smiled and asked, why don't you have to say it now? Cui Dongshan stretched out and gently rotated the wine bowl. It's very simple now, sir, both physically and mentally. Finally, I can have a lot of time to rest at home, travel leisurely and return home leisurely. Jiang Shangzhen shook his head and said, leisure? Not necessarily. Just choosing the location of the next clan requires a lot of things, and there are many things that need him to personally check. Cui Dongshan twitched his mouth and patted his abacus. For example, let you, the master of the Cloud Cave blessed land, come here to be the shopkeeper, even if the shop is crowded every day but your mind is idle? Jiang Shangzhen nodded. This is the truth. Cui Dongshan left the girl Peanuts in the Chaotu shop. There are only 2 New Year shops next door to Qilong Lane, acting as the shopkeeper Shi Rou, plus the little dumb boy named Zhou Xian, a handyman, a child with neat legs and withdrawn temperament, even if it's on Master Pei Qian's side. A smiling face, it happened to get along well with Shi Rou. Cui Dongshan came here from the Chaotu shop and lay down on the counter to look through the account book. The business is better for the New Year's Eve shop that sells cakes. The old fairy Jia's Chaotu shop is estimated to be dissatisfied with 1 page of the account book after half a year. But this really doesn't blame the old gods for their inability, mainly because their own mountain fights, the Baozhai shop at Nujiashan Ferry, and the Grass 2 shop on the side of the alley in the small town. They do not occupy a good place, and the furnishings on the shelves inside the shop, there is no possibility of missing. The immortal masters who come to visit here in the small town are more to drink wine from Huang Sis family, eat cakes from Qilong Alley, see the school run by the Qin family in Longweixi, and Taoye where Tianjun Shesher is. Lane it must be said to go in addition to Erlang Lane where the ancestral home of the Yuan family is located, and Nipping Lane where the ancestral home of the Chao family is located. Regarding this matter, Luopa Mountain actually had ideas, wondering whether to say hello to the county government and Huaihuang County government, and to seal up the Mud Bottle Lane where the mountain's main ancestral home was located. It doesn't matter if you cross the road, the fairy master on the mountain should not walk around at will, but Qin Pingon did not agree and the matter would not stop. Cui Dongshan tapped his finger on the ledger, raised his head and shouted, "Sure, shopkeeper." Shiro trembled, "Yes." Cui Dongshan tweeted, 20 years have passed. The treasurer sure got up early and was greedy for the dark and worked hard. Can be said that he has a good way of making money. He actually helped us to make so much money for Luopashen. In fact, the shop looks at the daily business is good, but after all only sells cakes. How much money can it earn? Really want to talk about making money? Far worse than the neighbors next door. Cui Dongshan looked at the trembling Shiro, closed the account book and smiled. Every word is sincere, every good thing, and he didn't talk to your yin and yang. Why, there is a ghost in his heart? A pun. Shiro didn't dare to talk back. A fallen mountain, she is most afraid of this person. The little mute is not afraid of this big white goose at all. He rarely speaks hoarsely and has a voice like sandstone. Stone shopkeepers do business and have a clear conscience. You make less money, don't blame the shop. Blame the cakes for not selling high prices. If you are, I don't think I have enough money so I can sell it in exchange. Shiro wanted to drag the little dumb right behind her, but she didn't expect to be able to pull it. The little dumb didn't move. Instead she reached out and grabbed Shiro's arm. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "Who are you? Have I asked you something?" The little mute raised his head and said, "Zhou Junqian, disciple Pei Qian, do you know now?" Old Xianxia originally squatted at the entrance of the shop to watch the excitement. But now he heard the thimble of the little bastard, who was a little anxious, waved his hand quickly and motioned the child to say a few words. Cui Dongshan smiled without talking, rubbing his chin with his fingers. The little mute said, "If you are a man, come to me alone if you have the ability, don't involve the treasurer sure. Anyway, if anyone is unreasonable and secretly wears our little shoes, I will bring the shoes to the master's master." Jiang Shang is really amazed. This little guy is very accurate. After Cui Dongshan left, Shiro breathed a sigh of relief and rubbed the head of the little mute. "Don't talk like that in the future because I am thinking about it so I can't make it." The little mute had arms around his chest. "If people don't offend me I won't be a prisoner, but who dares to provoke our shop? And when I and Pei Qian learn to fist in the future, one punch will be enough for people to carry pits and the grave coffin is saved. I have been an errand guy in Qilong Alley for a long time, and I learned a lot of public language with the local people, especially women and ants. The children didn't call the master of the mountain master, only the master of the master." Zhou Junqian thought for a while and felt that in the future he would still have to get a little familiar with the master of the mountain, otherwise he would go to the mountain to file a complaint. Qin Pingon favored his students and didn't help to uphold justice. After that, the two of them read miscellaneous books together behind the counter. When Shiro was turning the pages of the book, the child asked, "Treasurer Shir, who is Lord Qin Shan?" Shiro thought for a while and smiled, "A good man, very reasonable." Zhou Junqian said depressed, "But I don't know his reasoning." Shiro couldn't help but said, "You have your own reasoning. You don't need to deliberately explain his reasoning. If you say it he will listen carefully. Even if you don't say it he will see it." Zhou Junqian wondered, "Is there really such a good person?" Shiro nodded lightly and leaned over the counter with a smile in her eyes. "Is there somewhere else? I don't know. Anyway, we have it in Luopashen." Zhou Junqian angrily said, "Then he still has such an unreasonable student who can only scare people. I don't think it is that good." Shiro laughed dumbly. "Maybe it's the same kind of people who can feed all kinds of rice." Then Shiro lowered her voice and said quietly, "I pretend to be so afraid of that person but am not that afraid." Zhou Junqian grinned and nodded. "I can see it." Shiro continued to flip through the book. Suddenly, a slim girl appeared at the door, timidly said, "My brother asked me to pass a word to the treasurer Shir, saying that when he walks away I will come here to find you." Sure, Rouse's heartstrings tightened for a moment. Peanut said, "My brother said the treasurer sure is actually afraid that he will pretend not to be so afraid of him as much as he is not afraid of him." After the girl left, Zhou Xian said softly, "I am a little afraid of him." That day the ferry slowly drew ashore, and a group of people disembarked at the New Jiaoshan ferry. Cui Dongshan, who had been waiting here for a long time, only saw Pei Qian, the millet grain, and the Wuxian demon. Cui Dongshan asked, "Where's Sir?" Pei Qian said, "Master thinks that the ferry is too slow, so I have to take my wife to Kongshui country and Tsai country and return soon." Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "As long as you give money, this ferry can be very fast. Some high-rank intercontinental ferry boats can be extremely fast if they smash the ferry money madly regardless of the cost." Pei Qian stared, "You give it." Cui Dongshan bent down and smiled with the white-haired boy and asked, "Come on." The white-haired boy sneered and said, "It costs you money, can you control it?" Cui Dongshan grinned and said, "Luopishen has received the letter from the husband. I plan to let you choose 2 prominent positions. One is the New Year's Eve shop. The master sister has stayed there. The skin bag worn by the shopkeeper is the legacy of an ascending monk in Tongyi's Hao. The man was too long to live, and if he had to deal with my husband he was taken down by our Luopa mountain. There is also the grass head shop next door which has a profound Taoism. The unfathomable old sits in it." The white-haired boy asked, "How tall?" Cui Dongshan replied with his heartfelt voice, "The predecessor was the dragon slasher in the world. Do you think he is tall?" The white-haired boy's heart was shocked. Where's Luopa Mountain? Either he slaughtered an ascendant realm casually, or the dragon slayer was a shopkeeper. Well, this is what the hermit ancestors should have style, and I will eat and drink here without losing the price. However, the white-haired boy still chooses the New Year's shop, intending to explore the predecessor of the dragon slayer first, and then decide whether to recruit his subordinates to be a kid. It laughed and said, "So from today I will be the new shopkeeper of the New Year's Eve shop." Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "You think too much, it's just a shop assistant." It sneered, "You don't count." Cui Dongshan said, "Unfortunately the husband said in the letter that no matter where you go, you can only be a shop assistant first." The white-haired boy thumped his heart. "I helped the hermit ancestor to fight the country so hard and made an immortal contribution. I didn't expect it, but I still chilled the hearts of the soldiers." Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "I said in advance that when you arrive at Qilong Alley, you should not be a demon or you will be conceited." Reaching out and holding down the white-haired boy's head, the real name of the natural transfiguration demon, knowingly smiled recklessly, sent him to the door. Cui Dongshan squinted his eyes and said, "Actually, I forgot to tell you. The most unlucky thing is that I am better at dealing with the transformation demon. It will be a bit difficult to fight the Immortal Realm Sword Cultivator. It is simple to fight the Ascension Realm Transformation demon." After a while, Cui Dongshan raised his hand and shook his white sleeves. The white-haired boy's face was pale, his lips were pursed, and he said nothing. Just now, this person's heart opened up, like a fool who took the initiative to open the door to welcome the guests. She didn't believe in evil, so she crossed the threshold. The result was instantly torn into more than 300 parts, and they were placed on a chessboard between colorful clouds. As many chess pieces. Millet Grain pulled Cui Dongshan's sleeve but didn't speak. The little girl in black did not say that this is not possible. She didn't think she could point fingers at Cui Dongshan, but she was really worried, so she just raised her head and scratched her face haha twice. Cui Dongshan smiled softly and patted the head of the Millet Grain. "Don't worry, we are playing around." The white-haired boy said in his heart, "You are embroidered tiger?" On the Great Wall of Jianqi, the hermit ancestor had never said that his uncle Cui Yang would be transformed into his student. On the side of the night ship, Wu Shuangjiang helped her make up for the memory. Among them, only 3 of them were willing to evaluate the heroes of the monks in Haoran's hometown, the Beidasheng Jingzhong and the great master Cui Yan. There is also a Zhou Zi. Cui Dongshan complained, "Well, why do you curse?" The white-haired boy frowned. "No, this person is not all Cui Yang, not even Cui Yang. I only feel that the lost mountain of the hermit patriarch is really dangerous." Ascending to the realm in a majestic manner, it seemed that there was no way to walk sideways. It glanced at Cui Dongshan's sleeve and sneered, "Yes, the ancient mirror shines on the gods, the body is clean, the sleeves have the East China Sea, the jade pot falls, and it will release a bright moon." Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "The day and the moon are not idle day and night. Who is as lazy as Lao Tzu on the mountain and refuses to cultivate and be a god?" The white-haired boy exclaimed, good poems, you can fry a large table of dishes. If you come to this one every day you won't be able to save a lot of money after a year." Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "In the future, learn how to talk with old god Jia." With the first-line peak of Zhou Mountain as the center, the surrounding area is 800 miles, which are all private mountains and rivers of Xinjiang Mountain. The peaks are like the peaks of the stars and the moon, and the sword chi crisscrosses and the weather is very diverse. From time to time, there are sword repairs and imperial swords, looking like a stream of fireflies dragging the sky. There was no empty chair in the meeting of the Patriarch Hall today. All the sword sages and worshippers were present. Sovereign Zhu Huang, the old ancestor of the Yupu realm, Xianxia. Tao Yanbo, the ancestor of the Tao family who is in charge of money. The Patriarch Yan Chu, head of the sect. Enshrine the mountain Yuan Jinya. In addition, those who are in the front are the masters of the peaks like Bai Yunfeng. At the back there is Tianwan who is in charge of Shanshui Dibao and Jinghua Shuiyue. As for the collection and screening of information, she just hangs on her name and has no real power. The bottom of the seat is the outsider Yuan Bai. To Xiefeng Peak Master. Every time he participates in the meeting of the Patriarch's Hall, Yuan Bai never speaks, but Tianwan makes up the number. However, this young swordsman was once one of the double Bii of the old Zhuang dynasty, and the other one is now on the Huiming mountain of the Luopashen clan, under the pseudonym Shao Poxian. It seems that neither of these two ended up badly and they are all under the fence. Not long after Yuan Bai was promoted from Kiching to worship, he went down the mountain with his sword and went to the Yellow River in Fenglei Garden to ask the sword, successfully delaying the latter's breakthrough. Yuan Bai's kendo achievements have come to the end of the road to death. Yuan Bai was facing Xiefeng and there was only a maid beside him. It's just that this time the first-line peak discussion, there are two new faces in the Patriarch Hall. A young Jindan Jianxiu. The last peak opening ceremony was very grand and every continent is known. This person almost became the descendant of Longquan sword sect. For some reason Wan Qiong would voluntarily give up such a sword fairy embryo. There is also a younger Wu Tijing with a stern face and unsmiling face. After sitting down he closes his eyes and calms his mind just like Yuan Bai. Some of the heartfelt words of congratulations to him were simply too lazy to ignore. The natal flying sword is called Mandarin Duck. In addition, it is said that there is a flying sword that is secret. Now Xinjiang Mountain is going up and down, preparing for the ceremony to protect the mountain to enshrine Yuan Zini's ascend into the Jade Realm. Piyun Mountain Weibo is the first Daoist mountain monarch of the upper 5 realms in the history of Aquarius. And Xinjiang Mountain, the protector of the mountain, became the first monk of the upper 5 realms with a strange background. Today's discussion is another happy event. Not long ago there was great news from the Jiang family in Yunlin. This time the temple discussion, because of the fairness of the patriarch, as long as the Dali court nodded, Xinjiang Mountain would get another 50 people. Sword repair, travel to the wild, the next thing the temple can pass. In fact, the suzerain Emperor Bamboo has quietly broken through the border not long ago and has become a Yupu. But the Emperor Bamboo only discussed the matter in private with his uncle Xia Yuntai, god of wealth Tao Yanbo, Zhang Lv Yen Chu, Yuan Jifeng and confidant Tianwan. The Emperor Bamboo meant to release the news in a few years and come back. Organize the ceremony. Xia Yuntai couldn't help but compliment, sure nephew really calmed down. Tianwan, a dog-legged guy who is flattering to the suzerain, unexpectedly suggested that double happiness came to the door, and they just made preparations together. Tao Yanbo sneered, saying that I, the one who is in charge of the money, don't feel the need to save this money. Tianwan, who is in charge of Shanshui Mansion, knows how to think for me. Why don't we sit in another seat? Master Yen Chu laughed and said that it was our Xinjiang Mountain celebrations one after another. These years are too frequent so that the monks of one continent are overwhelmed, and friends on the mountain run and break their legs. It is estimated that there will be complaints. If Li Tuanjing was still alive, wouldn't he be so angry that Jianxin collapsed on the spot? Hearing that there is hope for the establishment of the next sect, except for Wu Tijing and Yuan Bai who are still indifferent, the rest of the Patriarch Hall has a more or less festive look. The previous review of Xinjiang Mountain's Izhou style was a little worse. Especially those time-honored Zongmen who spoke a lot of rude words to Xinjiang Mountain. Among them was the ancestor of Qin from Fengxue Temple Daoist, who openly said a lot of cool words, roughly meaning that Xinjiang Mountain is the best in the world. Let alone a next sect, it is a matter of course to open that next sect to Jiuzhou. Yan Chu smiled and said, now that the next sect is firmly established, it is not impossible to think about the next sect. I just don't know if old ancestor Qin is willing to move and attend our celebration. Tao Yanbo stroked his beard and said with a smile, when the time comes, I will personally make an invitation to the great salamander of the Fengxue Temple. If one fails, I will send a few more. The old sword immortals including Yunfeng were also quite depressed about this, especially those old men from Xianxia who had gone to the old dragon city and Dada battlefield for actual combat and fought for many times to produce their swords. Today's discussion is about the peak of Wu Tijing's rise to the Golden Core realm, which peak to open and where to practice swordsmanship from now on. There is not much left of the unused hill today. Among them there is a large and small solitary mountain collectively known as Guanlu Peak, which has been idle for a long time, and it has never been opened because a pair of swordsmen and Taoists have not appeared for a long time, and they have joined together among the gods. For this reason Xinjiang Mountain has set up a special rule. Any two Taoist priests and sword repairers, as long as they both become the Golden Core, not only can enter the Zhuanfeng, but also retain the previous mountain peaks. As for the Backsword Peak, it is the second highest peak outside the first-line peak of the Zhu Mountain. The founder of Xinjiang Mountain, the founder of the mountain, has a long sword placed on the top of the mountain. There was an iron law. Only later generations of sword repairers and centenarian swordsmen can do it. Take the long sword as a saber. The guardian enshrines Yuan Zhinya, and he usually practices in this mountain. In fact, as long as anyone can take the long sword, not to mention the identity of the peak master carrying the sword peak, in fact, there is no suspense even as the sovereign of Xinjiang Mountain. Then there is Qinggu Peak, which is the nearest to Bailudu. The mountain is small, the spirit is thin, and it is noisy. No one thinks it is a good place. After the end of the war, Yuan Zhuan moved back to 3 broken old mountains belonging to the Dali clan in the south. Although the mountains were badly damaged, they belonged to the great mountains of a country. The foundation was excellent. One of them was given to the sword sect from Longquan, the young golden pill who switched to Xinjiang Mountain, but the best mountain is said to have been specially reserved for Tao Zi by the old ape in white. In addition, there are only Bai Heifeng Yulong Mountain, Xian Mountain and Shulong Mountain. Whether it is good or not, they are not suitable for such an inexperienced kendo genius like Wu Tijing. In the end, the Lord Zhuhuang made a final decision and assigned Wu Tijing the fairy to carry the sword peak. For a time in the Patriarch Hall the expressions were different. But what was even more strange was that Wu Tijing took the initiative to ask for a different mountaintop to open the peak. It was Nejunlu Peak. Even the Emperor Bamboo and several old ancestors were at a loss, so they had to put the matter aside temporarily, planning to ask Wu Tijing privately why he chose this way. After the meeting, Tianwan went back to the Jiu Peak that was mocked as, the bird does not stand alone. This infamous female ancestor living alone in the mountains, reached the place of cultivating the Tao, suddenly stretched out his hand and held his forehead, his face full of pain. It was originally a good time to blossom and bear fruit. Among them, the ancestor Xia Yuntue was in retreat for many years and finally entered the 5 realms, and then the Lord Zhuhuang who enshrined Yuan Zhinya. Outside the mountain, there is the Wei and Jin dynasty of Fengxue Temple, Li Tuanjing Yellow River and Lu Ba Bridge in Fenglei Garden. Wu Tijing and Su Jia, who was quietly brought back to Xinjiang Mountain by her, stayed at Zhuanlu Peak. The reincarnated Wu Tijing of Li Tuanjing. And Su Jia? It was the reincarnation of the poor female sister of Xinjiang Mountain who fell in love with Li Tuanjing and killed him. Originally added the Yellow River in this life Lu Baqiao. Immerse. Coupled with other secret plans that are interlocking, she can occupy at least 40% of one continent of swordsmanship. And if she is lucky, it is half of it. It was used for refining as a thing to fortify the road. As for the remaining essence of sword luck, she was ready to make wedding clothes for others from the beginning. She can make a big deal with someone in the north. Regardless of whether he can be among the 14th realms in the future, he must promise her 3 things. Tianwan shook her sleeves and immediately returned to normal expression and said, "This hand is called a fairy hand. Can barely be placed in the Kaiyun Bureau." The woman's mind is indeed meticulous. She looked pained, her face twisted. They are just a pair of eyes, but they seemed to be separated from the whole person as if the existence of the vassal rule. Completely indifferent, she trembled, stretched out a finger, wiped it slowly on her face and muttered to herself, "Be honest, plus this time it has been twice but 3 things and once again I didn't follow the rules. But I'm not polite with you. Then I'll take your ferry back to Jianfeng too and urinate everywhere, and then I will strip off Xiefeng and dance lightly, otherwise I will go to Qinggu Peak, which is the nearest to the egret, and pull away." Shouting 3 times, Tianwan likes Yuanzu. Tianwan smiled and said, "The husband caught 2 big fish by accident. One of them is that Beiju Luzhou, the sword fairy white clothes. Jade can be hacked with stones from other mountains, and the mountain borrowed is exactly the Kendo in the southern half of Aquarius Island. Naturally it was to enter the ascending realm but to go to the 14th realm. However, this person's specific opportunity for harmony is still difficult to guess. As for the other big fish, it was the Lu family of the Middle-earth Yinyang family, not the Zhou Zi expected by Cui Dongshan. As for the survival of Xingyang Mountain, she naturally didn't care at all. After a raging fire, the snow mud flew away. Tianwan thought quietly and couldn't help sighing. She immediately slapped herself in the face. Tianwan was a little angry. She slapped again. Her cheeks were red and swollen. She smiled and said, "You bitch, you are so cruel that you even hit yourself." Tianwan, or Cui Dongshan, who depends on each other for life, walked around the house with his hands in sleeves. Land platform already far in the sky. Lu Kai is still hiding his head and tail. The handmaid Lu Kai beside Yuan Bai was in Xingyang Mountain, which was close to him compared to Luopa Mountain. Yi Zhuqing, the of water in the Chongdan River, once sent a few secret letters to the first line of peaks, but those pieces of insider information that seem to be very critical but actually insignificant are naturally on the side of Luopa Mountain and want to actively let Xingyang Mountain know about it. Turn the old sword Immortal, great sword Immortal, and young sword Immortal in the Patriarch Hall into the ditch. These secret letters were all handwritten by the steward Zhou Lian. Maybe every word on the letter was written by himself, but it imitated Yi Zhuqing's handwriting and tone. Maybe Yi Zhuqing is an old cook on the side, grinding with bare hands. In fact, relying on Luopa Mountain alone can scare a Chongdan River water mansion, but it is absolutely impossible for Yi Zhuqing to act like this and calculate Xingyang Mountain in partnership with a sect at such an enemy. It was a girl in Tsing-yi with a ponytail that made her so desperate to take refuge in Luopa Mountain. Cui Dongshan sighed, "It's just this kind of thing, how to say it? Can't say. It's all wrong to say it and it's also wrong to think about it." Tianwan, or Cui Dongshan, standing in the doorway with his arms folded with both hands, said with a smile, "Then the 2 of us, right here," Mr. Gongying asked Jian Zhengyangshan. Sort of coming. Chapter 8:17. At the junction of Susui country and Guyu country, in the green mountains and green waters, the wind is sunny, there is a pair of men and women walking side by side, hiking and climbing towards a mountain temple on the top of the mountain. Sword-backed man, don't wear the hosta on his head, blue shirt and long coat and cloth shoes. The woman carries the sword box on her back and wears a snow-white robe. Both people and scenery can be painted. The mountain is named Jingling. It was built more than 20 years ago. The temple is not of high rank. The one who enjoys incense is a goddess of the mountain who has never heard of the local people. At the beginning, it was sealed by an abbot of the Ministry of Rites of the country. At the beginning of the ceremony, scholars from the prefectures and counties were busy climbing relatives to seek ancestral shame, but it was a pity that they searched through official history books and local county chronicles, but couldn't find out which wife Lu Qian was in history. There is a famous Huang River nearby, and during the rainy season there is the site of Huang Lu and Spring Rising. The peaceful years at the end of the troubled times are more cherished, especially bright, so it coincides with a wedding banquet held at the Huanghe King's mansion. The marriage of the river is a rare event in a century. Therefore, from local officials to the people in the market, it is very festive, like the New Year. By the way, the incense from Jinglingshan Temple is also a little better than usual. The men and women who came to visit Jinglingshan Shrine were Qin Pingon and Ning Yao, who traveled southward. When Qin Pingon came, he talked to Ning Yao about the general situation of the old Jianshui villa, why Song Sr. was willing to give up his ancestral business, relocate to this seclusion, and the insider trading with the court of Susui state, Lu Qian's true identity. The 4 evil spirits of the former Shui nation mentioned that Su Lang, the green bamboo sword Immortal of Songxi nation, said with a smile at this moment. This mountain is commonly known as the tip of the heart. On the other side of the Huanghe River, there is a cliff-cut list book, Vermilion 8 characters, Bashengguju and Longmian Resurrection. The Huanghe master thought it was a good omen, so he built the Huanghe Shui mansion in the water under the cliff. In fact, according to general landscape rules, the Shui mansion should not be so close to the mountains to open a mansion, and it is easy for the landscape to conflict with each other. Ning Yao asked, "Great King Huanghe? What is it?" Qin Pingon laughed softly. "The real body is a giant catfish, the Huanghe River is turbid and the road blind date, but I heard that this river usually likes to be a Taoist, likes to talk, is quite elegant, so I don't like the name of the king of Huanghe. It's just that the people of the two countries along the Huanghe River still like to shout like this, it's hard to change." Ning Yao said, "If you take a concubine you can take a concubine. What does the river marry a wife?" Qin Pingon immediately suppressed his smile and said nothing more. When we arrived at the Jingling Mountain Shrine, the scattered pilgrims were mostly scholars and scholars, because the abbot of the Ministry of Etiquette who was enshrined in this mountain back then was responsible for the abbot of Susui State who will take the exam this year. Qin Pingon twisted out the 3 mountain incense, and after lighting it, it was naturally different from the vulgar man who worshipped the incense and prayed for blessings. Even if he bowed his head, he did not agree with the ceremony. Qin Pingon only paid homage to the 4 directions and did not worship the mountain empress in the temple. Then put it in the incense burner. Ning Yao didn't even light incense. It's not that Ning Yao looked down on Lu Qian's identity as a landscape god. After all, Lu Qian, a mountain temple, would definitely not be able to bear Ning Yao's 3 knots, so even Ning Yao, yes, Qin Pingon will stop it. There was a burst of brilliance on the painted statue of the god, and a woman in a precarious dress quickly walked out of the golden body of the mountain god. Lu Qian displayed a blindfold and her own magical powers, so that the ordinary master who came to the temple to make a wish did not know each other. Qin Pingon and Ning Yao stood in a secluded place. Lu Qian was full of vigor and bowed in salute. Qin Pingon and Ning Yao held fists in return. Lu Qian whispered, "Master Qin, is this Ning Jianxian from the Great Wall of Sword Qi? Ordinary people, how dare she ask that? If she asks the wrong person, the woman in front of her will not have the surname Ning, and the consequences will be disastrous." It's just that on Qin Pingon's side Lu Qian still knew it well. Ning Yao smiled and nodded. "I heard Qin Pingon talk about the past of Lu Qian and Song Fengshan before. It was not easy to get together." Lu Qian smiled Yanran and said suddenly, "It's no wonder that young Master Qin is willing to travel thousands of miles of mountains and rivers, and he has to go to Jianqi Great Wall to find girl Ning." Qin Pingon smiled and asked, "Senior Song is in the house now, right?" Lu Qian nodded and said, "Last time Grandpa Jianghu returned home, I heard that after Qin Gongzi returned to his hometown, he would walk the rivers and lakes again and he would be close. Every time he stopped at the door." Speaking of this, Lu Qian couldn't help smiling. The unsmiling grandfather in the past is now like an old child. Fengshan is in charge of drinking and drinking secretly. Every time he pretended to walk to the door, he would deliberately avoid Fengshan. Later, Fengshan deliberately asked if he wanted to send another letter to Luopashan, urging Qin Pingon, and the old man blew his beard and stared at him and said to beg him. It is not uncommon for love to come or not. However, during this period the old man stopped drinking as if he was saving. Qin Pingon asked, "Sister-in-law just came from the Huanghe Water Mansion? Will it be delayed?" Lu Qian shook her head and smiled. "No delay. Jingling and Huanghe have a good relationship. This time the river is married, Fengshan and I will go there to help receive guests. Only after hearing the voice of Qin Gongzi I will reply first." Tits passed on to Grandpa. Fengshan had already set off right now, so he went directly to the house to avoid detours and make Grandpa wait for a long time. One of the reasons why Lu Qian chose this place to build an ancestral temple was that Song Yushao and the water of the Huanghe River were good friends. Qin Pingon clasped his fist and said, "Then ask my sister-in-law to lead the way." Lu Qian took the lead to travel far away in the wind. Qin Pingon and Ning Yao followed. The house was away from the temple and Bailishan Road. After Song Yu washed his hands with a golden basin, he retired to the mountains and forests. For so many years he occasionally went to the rivers and lakes to relax. No more swords, no more going out after going through the old almanac. The 3 of them fell at the door of the house. Compared with the former martial arts sacred place Jianshui Villa in Qingsong County, the house in front of them was shabby. At the door stood an old man with white beard and hair, his hands behind his back, his stature slightly rickets. Squinted and smiled. Qin Pingon twisted his wrist, and a handful of bamboo yellow scabbard appeared in his hand. He raised it high and gently tossed it to the old man. Song Yushao was taken aback, stretched out his hand to catch the scabbard and said in doubt, "Boy, how did you get it back? By borrow grab?" At the end of the day the old man laughed out of his own mind and his mother, "Didn't this little melon skin get the scabbard back?" Qin Pingon hurried forward and smiled. "According to the rules of the world, how can people take it and return it?" Song Yushao was a little worried. 20 years ago that servant was a great master of the far travel realm. In his early years he looked at his contemplative spirit. He was not like a short-lived ghost. The future of martial arts would definitely have to go up. "Your kid is fine, right? Can be seen that Qin Pingon has some injuries right now. Could it be because of the scabbard? Such an act is too uneconomical. That imposing dragon across the river, casually swaying its head and tail, is like a wave of stormy waves for the rivers and lakes of more than 10 countries, including the watering in Tsai." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "His name is Zhou Xian. He is a great warrior of the Middle-earth warrior and a leading general. When I asked about the boxing he was the bottleneck of the 9 realms." Lu Qian's face was pale. Even if she knew that Qin Pingon was the last hermit of the Great Wall of Sword Qi or one of the 10 young people in the world, when she heard that the man was a martial artist who was the bottleneck of the 9 realms, Lu Qian was still frightened. Song Yushao clenched the bamboo scabbard in his hand and asked, "Wen Quan is very dangerous?" Qin Pingon shook his head and whispered, "This injury on my body is to compare it with others. It has nothing to do with Ma Zuxian's questioning boxing. It is not dangerous at all." Song Yushao stared. "With such a big tone, why don't you just fight Chao Ci?" Qin Pingon nodded and blinked. "I just beat Chao Ci. Anyway, I came here for a drink today. Besides, it's hard to say who is high and who is low in persuading wine." Song Yushao choked for a while and simply ignored the kid and did something boastful. He wanted Yun Nanfeng to speak out like the old man himself when he was young. Song Yushao turned his head and smiled and looked at that woman, Ning Yao. Ning Yao clasped his fist and said, "Younger Ning Yao, I've seen Grandpa Song." Song Yushao clasped his fists in return, then smiled while stroking his beard, squinting at someone, "You are a blessing." After entering the house together, Lu Qian took out the drinks and served a few plates of wine and dishes. After Ning Yao and Lu Qian toasted with Song Yushao and Qin Pingon, they left the wine table and let them drink alone. Song Fengshan was still on his way because he was only a martial artist in the 7 realms and could not travel far away from the wind. Naturally, he would not come and go like the wind like Lu Qian, the wife of a mountain god. Song Yu burned a wine bowl in one hand and pointed with the other hand, flicking the bamboo scabbard lying horizontally on the table, sighing with emotion. "You kid said lightly and casually, but I know how difficult it is. It's not only about Ma Zhuxian who has won the 9 realms with Quan Quan, but the old man is talking about why Qin Pingon can go to this day. Come here, sit down and drink." Qin Pingon raised the wine bowl and said with a smile that it was too late. He fined himself 3 bowls first. After drinking 3 bowls in a row, he pours the wine and gently touched the bowls of Senior Song and drank them all and then pour the wine to the full. For the bowl, Qin Pingon took a large chopsticks to serve the wine and the dishes slowly. Song Yushao smiled and said, "How did you fight with Ma Zhuxian?" Your kid said. "This is the real accompaniment dish." Qin Pingon only briefly talked about the process and he didn't have a few punches anyway. Song Yushao had drunk, wiped his mouth and said, "Did you hit you?" Qin Pingon nodded, raised one foot and stepped on the bench. "If you dare to ask a punch in the future, let him fall again until he doesn't dare to ask a punch." Song Yushao lifted his chin. Qin Pingon began to pretend to be stupid. Song Yushao had to remind, "If you ask for such a heavy punch, you should not drink a big bowl of wine. The bowl at home is small. You should drink 2 bowls first. It's not drunk to drink except when you are full. Don't be so haggling. Persuade alcohol on the wine table to hurt your character, but just eat vegetables and not drink and wait for others to persuade you to drink." Qin Pingon said helplessly, "Wait a while for Brother Song to come to the wine table. Seniors tell him this. Let Brother Song learn from me. Drink 3 bowls before sitting down." Song Yu said with a smile, "Fengshan is holding back bad. A few years ago if you have been talking about having a girl, maybe you can be someone's old wife. Now it's all right and it's completely useless. Wait a minute, you can see for yourself. I can't bear to hold it." Qin Pingon wiped his face. "Look for a drink." Song Yushao kicked his boots, sat cross-legged, eyes gleaming, and asked with a smile, I saw a lot of sword immortals on the Great Wall of Jianqi, right? Qin Pingon nodded. I've seen it all. After that, Song Yushao didn't ask much about Qin Pingan's past in the Great Wall of Jianqi, a young foreigner, how he became a hermit, how he became a real sword repairer, and in that battle the old man didn't ask who made the sword and punches, which sword fairy fought side by side, how many toasts on the wine table, and how many silent partings on the battlefield. Qin Pingon didn't ask why he didn't see the old butler of Chu and the concierge, but he just asked about the current situation of the rivers and lakes of the country of combing water. He learned that Wang Yiran, the martial arts leader of the Hengdao villa, had improved his sword skills. After Su Lang, the green bamboo sword immortal of the Songshi kingdom, he became the second martial artist of the 7 realms in the rivers and lakes. He broke the border several years earlier than Song Fengshan. Su Lang is now closed, and it is said that if he has the hope of leaving the border, he has become a far traveler. Before this retreat, Su Lang, who was carrying green bamboo with his sword and hanging green bamboo, made a special trip to visit this place to recount the old days with Song Yu. It was a smile and grudge. As for the real identity of the general, Chu Hao of Xia's Hongshan Han One's son, he has already given power to the country and completely emptied the emperor. Because of the battle that hit the central part of Aquarius, Han One's son has made outstanding achievements in battle and has not retreated in several deadly battles. Hard fighting, dispatching troops and generals, playing quite well organized, very happy, and the wind has changed. The leader of the Chu party, who was condemned by everyone in the past, has become quite famous in temples, Shilin and Jianghu. Therefore, there are rumors that His Majesty has deliberately renounced the situation. Because the granddaughter-in-law Lu Qian is a spy of Dali, Song Yushao knows more inside stories. Today she is still the country of combing water under the Dali clan. His Majesty deliberately breaks away from this level of identity, and he really can't compete with the one who holds multiple positions. The great general Chu Hao, or Han Wanson, who attached to the Dali Song clan, is equivalent to the Emperor Han Wanson and Dali dynasty. The 3 parties have done business under the table, and there is no need to be the son of today. Shang is still an unknown prince from the country of Susui. Of course, it was one son's replacement status, so he only changed the year number, not the country name. And Chu Hao, who has made great achievements, will also surprise people. The future Shui nation will not be a vassal of Dali Song, but will only be better than a vassal. There must be many secret schemes like this in Dali. After Song Fengshan rushed to the house, Qin Pingon changed his method to persuade him to drink 3 bowls of wine before he could sit down. Qin Pingon smiled and said, previously attached to the Confucian temple recently, I saw 2 Yuzhou Qiu's children, Senior Song. Would you like to go to Yuzhou for hot pot together? Song Yushao waved his hand and said, I can't go anymore. Hot pot is not bad for that meal. At most you can go to Dai on the long road. If you are too free to look back, you can stop by your hill. Wait for me deliberately, I will go by myself. Even if I have seen it, it doesn't matter if your kid is on the mountain or not. Drinking and drinking, Song Fengshan, who once threatened to beat Qin Pingon on the wine table, is already dazzled. Every time he raises the wine bowl, the guy on the opposite side just lifts his head up and gets bored in one mouthful, and then you are free. This kind of persuading wine is the most terrible, so how can Song Fengshan be free? Qin Pingon was 10 years younger than himself, and he was no longer inferior to swordsmanship. Could it be that he had to lose even the amount of alcohol? Of course not. Song Fengshan, who had been drinking too much, had to pull Qin Pingon to draw a punch. The result was a mess. I ran outside the door twice and squatted. Lu Qian gently patted her back. After Song Fengshan wiped it dry, she wandered back to the wine table and continued drinking. Ning Yao reminded once that you are a guest anyway. Let Song Fengshan drink less. Qin Pingon was helpless and said that Brother Song couldn't drink enough and he had to drink. I really couldn't stop it. Ning Yao made Qin Pingon stop himself with a mouthful of boredom. Under the eaves of the house, Ning Yao had to apologize to Lu Qian. Lu Qian smiled and said that it was okay. The opportunity was rare. Today Fengshan was drunk and felt uncomfortable for a while, and she might regret it for a long time if she is not drunk. In the end, Song Yushao was an old river and lake. In fact, he drank more than Song Fengshan, but he was still not very drunk, but his face flushed, and he hiccuped with alcohol to persuade Fengshan and Qin Pingon to drink less. Fortunately, Fengshan said drunk and fell asleep. But after all, Qin Pinyin is now a man with a wife. If he drank a lot of meat and vegetables today, he would ask Ningyao to find someone under the table at that time. Wouldn't he drink the next wine? It's just that Qin Pingan's drinker is really good. Song Yushao drank to the end and saw that the guy's eyes were bright when he drank. There was no such thing as a drunk drunkard. The old man had no choice but to convince him, and he had to take the initiative to cover the bowl and said, "It's just like this today. It's really impossible to drink anymore. My grandchildren and daughters-in-law are very strict. I drank half a year's share of drinks in one meal today. What's more, I have to go to Huanghe Water Mansion to have a wedding tonight. I can't go and just drink tea. It's not plausible always have to hang over with wine." Qin Pingan said that after drinking and going to Tsai country he must hurry up and do business immediately, so he can't stay here. Song Yushao laughed and said that it is important to be busy with business affairs. Next time you will have a drink and enjoy yourself, whether it is in Luopa Mountain or here, get a hot pot and divide it thoroughly. When Qin Pingan got up, he swayed and Song Yushao slowly got up, pressing his fingers against the tabletop. His figure would be more stable. As for Song Fengshan, he was already lying on the table. Song Yushao picked up the yellow bamboo scabbard and threw it to Qin Pingan across a wine table. He smiled and said, "I'm here for you." Taking the scabbard, Qin Pingan walked out of the house and went to the courtyard. Qin Pingan and Ningyao said goodbyes to the old man and Lu Qian who had helped Song Gaofeng. Yufeng left, but within dozens of miles Qin Pingan suddenly reached out and covered it. I shut my mouth and landed in a hurry. I wanted to reach out to help a tree. When my hand fell and my head hit the tree, I simply touched my forehead against the tree trunk and vomited wildly. Ningyao stood aside and reached out to pat his back. Helplessly said, "Death to face." In her impression, Qin Pingan had never been drunk after drinking, let alone vomiting. Qin Pingan didn't even shake off his alcohol and drunk his drunkenness, so he let Ningyao walk a few steps with him because of his drunkenness, and when he was relieved he went to Tsai country. Ningyao walked with him on the mountain path, walking slowly, wearing a blue shirt. Swaying, she had to reach out and support his arm. The drunk man gently called her name, Ningyao Ningyao. She couldn't laugh or cry and had to respond again and again. On the other side of the house, the old man sat back at the wine table, smiling, looking out the door. The new generation of people in the arena often persuade people to drink just to see the ugliness of people after being drunk. Lao Jianghu, because he doesn't have enough alcohol, he will persuade his friends to drink enough. Or when there is no shortage of drinks, the reason to persuade the wine is to listen to a few words in your heart. Maybe every old river and lake is like a wine jar, filled with a kind of wine called Once Upon a Time. When I arrived at the house in Keiguo, I saw the couple Yang Huang and Yingying. Qin Pingan did not drink this time, but took Ningyao to the grave to toast, and then returned to the house to sit for a while. After leaving the house, Qin Pingan glanced back. 40 years are like wiping. In the rivers and lakes, many deceased people have gone. Only the story stays, like a boat seeking a sword. In the Rouge County of Tsai country, a young female cultivator named Lu Gaoxin, as a direct disciple of the goddess Song, has been a consecrate to Tsai country for several years after she descended the mountain. She is actually not very old and her face is still young, but she has a look. Haggard and gray hair. Tonight she sat on the roof, drank a pot of wine, put the pot on her feet and took off a homemade bamboo flute around her waist. The bright moon hung high and the flute whimpered. Life is like a dream, in the middle of the moon in the flute and the body in the wine. She leaned back, lay on the roof, raised her hand and gently shook a string of silver bells on her wrist. In the sound of the bells, it seemed that someone was passing by. Just with the clear and melodious ding-dong sound, I will not stay. She glanced at the full moon, the most pitiful heaven and moon. Wei Wei, the goddess of the mountain, goddess of the country of combing water, was so bored today, taking advantage of the absence of pilgrims in the middle of the night. She sat on the steps and took out from her sleeves the book of landscape travels with constant adventures. She was happy and never bored. It's a pity that the mountain bookseller didn't reprint this book of travels on mountains and rivers, and there was no longer the pages of the painted fairy books that Wei Wei had been waiting for. The two goddesses who accompanied the goddess of the mountain to read the book together. One, her eyes lit up, she blurted out and said the word faithful. Wei Wei raised his head, puzzled. Why, you don't know a lot of characters, teach me to read and read. A woman in palace dress, she is short in stature, but has a very round charm. Today she left the capital to visit Chongqun Palace again. Back then I was driven out of the capital and had to cultivate here. Therefore what I saw and heard was bleak, chilly, and the flowers would fade away no matter how beautiful they bloomed. Now I look at them everywhere, but they are picturesque and pleasing to the eye. The Queen Mother, who is expensive by mother and son, is now the most powerful woman on the continent of Aquarius. 2 sons, one is the Emperor Dali, who is destined to be named forever, and the other is the king of the Dali domain, who has made great achievements in the war. The brothers have survived the war together. As for who is the real Song Mu and who is Song He, does it matter? Anyway, on her side it was only important once and she was heartbroken about it, but now it is not important. Feudal King Song Mu, the companion capital of Dadu Bank, except for the title of emperor, how different from the emperor. There are even 6 yamen. It's time to be content and I can't ask for more. When she visited Changchun Palace this time, in addition to a few monks who accompanied the army to worship the royal family, she was also accompanied by an old monk from the Qin Tianjian. At this moment the supreme elder of Changchun Palace sat with him on one side. Behind the Empress Dowager, there was only a woman who looked like a maid holding a sword. She was graceful but covered her face with her natal water method. It is a pity that Dali failed to save Chao Rong and served as an offering to the Song family. This man of Didao, who lived in the mountains of the old Daoist dynasty for many years, is said to be one of the direct disciples of the 3 masters of Bai Yujing, and the brother of He Xiaoliang, the Qingliang sect of Luzhou in Beiju. Chao Rong lived in the old dragon city and the companion capital. The battlefield, many shots, extremely eye-catching. Then there was Pu Yen, the bone swordsman, a female crown from the sword house of the upside-down mountain master, who was unable to be attracted by Dali, and the war ended and quietly left. In an Aquarius island, in that battle strange people and strangers appeared endlessly, and there was a great atmosphere of that group of fish leaping over the dragon gate. The only problem is that these gods on the mountain have a peaceful relationship with His Majesty the Emperor, but they are quite close to the companion. As for the old southern vassals who had healed their scars and forgotten their pain, she really didn't pay attention to them, but she had a near-term worry in front of her. The pavilion by the cliff, the old man in charge of the Qin Tianjian, was talking to the Empress Dowager about the transfer of martial arts in that country. She frowned. Mainly in the south of Dadu, several 9-level martial arts have appeared one after another, including long famous masters in the far-reaching world, and a few new faces who turned out to be born. In addition, some young martial artists of the 3 realms of refining gods. The Department of Criminal Affairs of Dali is secretly recorded, with detailed records of his name, birthplace, teacher's biography and landscape history. On the other hand, in Dadu North, especially the native Wufu of Dali, if you only talk about the superficial things, then in the last 2 decades, it seems a bit lackluster. Qin Tianjian smiled bitterly about this. It was not only because Song Chongjing condensed the martial arts from one continent back then, but the bigger problem was that of the old Lizhu cave, a place called Luapa Mountain. Even if the unreasonable mountain lord Chen Pingon is not to be discussed, Pei Qian, a disciple who travels to various continents under the pseudonym Jing Qian, is already in 9 realms, besides Zhu Lian, Chongqiu Lu Baixiang Wei Xian. Which one is not the master of martial arts? What's more, there are a pair of sisters and brothers in the Yang family shop in the small town, a female Sudian with the nickname Rouge and Shirling Mountain from Taoya Alley. The senior sister is the bottleneck of the golden body, and the junior brother is already the warrior of the far travel boundary. However, according to the secret records of the 2 archives of Dali Li and Xing, Sudian's qualifications, roots and character are better. It was the first time that the Supreme Elder of Changchun Palace knew the inside story of these mountains, and she almost felt unstable when she heard it. Is the Luapa Mountain near Piyun Mountain already among the sects? Why is there no news about such a big event? And that young mountain lord who is not confused, is already a 10-level martial artist? Weibo has hosted so many night banquets, how can he keep hiding the matter? Seeing that the Empress Dowager was obviously displeased, the old man of Qin Tianjian carefully brewed some words and said, with regard to martial arts, there has always been a saying that the martial artist of the 3 realms of refining God will die in his own country, and the martial artist of the end will die in this continent. Luapa Mountain has this background. Although the strong martial arts are so condensed in one place, it is too weird, but it is not all a bad thing. In fact, it is still in the Wall of Flowers. After all, in the boundary of Longzhou, it is within the mainland of Dali Mountain and River. Gui nodded for the lady of the Empress Dowager Dolly, and the old monk sensibly got up and left. She stood up, and the Changchun Palace Supreme Elder was about to follow her up. Without turning her head, she just stretched out her hand and pressed it, and the latter immediately sat back to her position. She looked out the mountain frowning. The old grudge between Xingyang Mountain and Luopa Mountain, the two new Jin sects, seemed to be destined to be unwilling. Otherwise, Piyun Mountain would not help the Luopa Mountain to hide and tuck in this way. If it was replaced with a general mountain, it would have been impatient for a long time to show the heritage of the martial art. In fact, in her opinion, what was the turmoil that happened in the sky of Liju Cave back then? Yu Qin Pingon are both the sword fairy of the upper five realms and even the master of a sect, so why bother about it? As for your friend Lu Xianying, he didn't die but a blessing in disguise. After returning from a study tour in Nan Pasuzhou, the Qin family became the heir of Saint Wan and sword sect of Longquan. Why bother to ask for an explanation with Yuan Xinye, who was enshrined by Xingyang Mountain? She turned her head and asked. The imperial court came forward to mediate and help Xingyang Mountain to ease the cheeks. For example, try to let Yuan Xinye go down the mountain, visit Luopa Mountain, apologize, pay a gift? The woman standing next to the Empress Dowager was Yang Hua, the of water, who quietly left her jurisdiction. She shook her head, wore a golden spike long sword on her waist and whispered, the slave and maid returned to the mother, don't say the current Xingyang Mountain will not agree to this matter. Qin Pingying and Lu Xianying also don't think they can expose it in such a sum. She stretched out her hand and patted Tingzhu angrily, said, if you are together you will be hurt, and it may even be the result of both losers. Both of these are sects, so they don't even understand this simple truth. Yang Hua was silent. Some questions have long been answered by the person who asked them. The woman sneered, well, there are just these two sections. At this moment I am still busy choosing a site for the next sect. Or Qin Pingon and Zhu Huang, the two sword immortals, think that they have become sect masters. Crossing the river and demolishing the bridge, you can have the ability to ignore my dolly. Yang Hua said, Manny, they are making a big fuss. In fact, it is not all bad for us, dolly. If both sides abandon their previous suspicions, each expands too fast, but it is very easy to give birth to right and wrong. The woman turned her palm into a fist and tapped the pavilion column lightly. Yang Hua continued, especially the lost mountain of Qin Pingon, where the clouds cover the mist hidden deep and rise too fast. In addition, this person is one of the 10 young people in the world, especially the sword spirit. The last hermit of the Great Wall still formed alliances in Luzhou Beiju. If you are not careful, you will get a big tail. Maybe in 100 years, it will be difficult for anyone to restrain the mountain. The woman stretched out her finger and rubbed her eyebrows. Mr. Wei Dashan really caused me a lot of trouble. Regarding Wei Bo, she was still willing to look at him with admiration, a little more polite. After all, Piyun Mountain and Daoist National Fate are in a close relationship. In these years, Wei Bo, as the monarch of Beiyue Mountain, has done so that the court can't fault it. The Ministry of Rights, the Ministry of Justice, and officials who frequented Piyun Mountain all spoke highly of the monarch and spoke bluntly. Among the 5 sacred mountains, Wei Bo acted the most decently, because he was old-fashioned and elegant in his conversation. Know the rules of officialdom best. Besides, Wei Bo still has a handle held in his hand by Dali in this Changchun Palace. Song Yuzhong, serving as a mountain god, is the meaning of the first emperor. Yang Hua, the maidservant beside her, has become the righteous of the river in the danger, which is her arrangement. She suddenly turned her head and smiled. Yang Hua, now I am the Empress Dowager, you are the goddess of water, are all empresses? Yang Hua knelt down immediately and said nothing. The long sword was put aside. The woman smiled and walked around behind Yang Hua. She gently lifted her foot and kicked Yang Hua's rounded arc, jokingly. Such a beautiful woman, but she doesn't show her face to others. It's a violent thing. She felt a little bit self-satisfied and she reached out and touched her cheek. Unlike me, there is no fruit in cultivating, so I can only fight against the bronze mirror hairpin. It's hard to keep the old flavor. Her eyes suddenly sharpened. This Qin Pingon, if you dare to overdo it, don't give Dolly a little bit of face and dare to turn over the old account casually, then don't blame my Dolly for being rude to Luopa Shan. The elders of the Changchun Palace were thrilled. The woman suddenly laughed, turned around, bent down, covered her heavy chest with one hand and patted Yang Hua's head with one hand. Get up, don't be like a puppy. Yang Hua picked up the long sword on the ground, stood up respectfully and stood aside again holding the sword. The woman sat back on the bright yellow embroidered dragon mat and suddenly asked, Yang Hua, do you have a landscape painting of that young mountain owner? I don't remember exactly what he looked like, I just remember that he was a sour and thin back then. Black mud legs. Yang Hua nodded, took out a scroll from her sleeve and spread it gently on the stone table. The woman was very surprised, tapping the scroll lightly with a finger, looking at the sword-backed green shirt in the painting. He exclaimed, I only heard that the female Big 18 has changed, how can a man change so much? Is it because of going up the mountain to cultivate the Tao? The woman lay on the table, thought for a while, took out a piece of broken porcelain from her sleeve, and then called the old monk of the Qin Tianjian to let him find the young master of Luopa Mountain and see what she was doing now. The old monk was embarrassed, after all, this matter was too taboo. The woman smiled and said, He is not in the fairyland, he will only be unaware of it. We can quickly remove the formation after seeing it. The old monk had no choice but to do what he ordered, and began to set up the formation, and finally used the piece of broken porcelain as the center of the formation, using his magical powers, watching the mountains and rivers from afar, and the mist rising, and finally a young Taoist man appeared in the pavilion. At this moment it seems to be on the top of a mountain overlooking the scenery. I saw the man wearing a lotus crown on his head, holding a white jade Ganoderma lucidum, gently tapping the palm of his hand, wearing a simple and elegant green gauze robe, stepping on a flying cloud shoe and carrying a bamboo yellow scabbard long sword. The woman tilted her head as if she couldn't imagine that the boy in the low alley would become such a person. The next moment her heart shook and she saw the young Taoist priest, who looked up as if looking at her. He squinted and smiled, raised his hand with white jade Ganoderma and gently wiped his neck. Xinjiang Mountain Egret Crossing. A genealogy immortal master named Chao in the Xianxia named Guyunla asked for a room with a letter. Just report Zhou Xian's name directly without spending money, because this house will be bought directly for 1 year. Otherwise Xinjiang Mountain is holding a big celebration now. There is no room left for the guests. Otherwise, let alone the Jishipt room of this Xianxia Inn, ordinary monks on the mountain do not have the ability to live in Xinjiang Mountain. Everywhere in the Xianxia mansion, even the surrounding 2 county inns, are crowded with masters from all directions. In the moonlight, Qin Pingon moved a bamboo and rattan lounge chair and sat on the observation deck with a wide view, overlooking the Qinggu Peak, gently shaking the sword gourd in his hand. In 3 days it will be an auspicious day. It is a celebration for the great sage Yuan who moved to the mountain to enshrine one of the 5 realms. It is a family of immortals with the head of the ancestor, and the number of swords is like a cloud. It is said that Xinjiang Mountain Shazong site selection of the old Zhuang dynasty has been finalized. Then Xinjiang Mountain will soon become the first sect to establish the Shazong in Aquarius. These time-honored sects of Xinwu Mountain are now. Ning Yao didn't follow here, she went straight back to Luopa Mountain. Qin Pingon used a series of reasons such as asking Jian Xinjiang Mountain should no one suppress the battle. Besides, I just received a letter from Cui Dongshan from Feijian, that wife Tianwan has hooked up with Bai Chong. That is a sword repairman who can enter the Ascended Realm anytime and anywhere. He and Lu Xianying are 2 just in case. What should I do when I meet Bai Chong who is so mysterious? But Ning Yao did not agree. It's just that Bai Chong really wants to hide in Xinjiang Mountain. If she dares to take out the sword she will come. Actually, Qin Pingon must be blamed for eating tofu in a hurry. She used to be on the Jingling Mountain Road before, taking advantage of the lack of people around, drunk and courageous. But when Ning Yao broke free she went to Keiguo Road. Pay attention to him. Qin Pingon withdrew his gaze, no longer looked at the Qinggu Peak, pursed his lips and narrowed his eyes with a smile. I have never seen such a shy Ning Yao, timid even for a moment, blushing like a peach blossom. Qin Pingyun, don't keep a sword gourd around his waist, what else to drink? The immortal master Chao Mo, who appeared at the Baidu, traveled far away with his sword on his back, a crown of lotus flower and a robe of green yarn. He is really a man full of moral energy and ethereal wind. Even the female cultivator in the Xianxia Inn who was in charge of hospitality and recording files doubted whether this Taoist real person was someone from outside the world who deliberately refused to stay in the fairy mansion of the peaks of Xinjiang Mountain. Qin Pingon lay on the chair, closed his eyes and rested, half asleep and half awake until dawn. The next day Qin Pingon still did not wait for Lu Xianying. but the entire egret crossing was alarmed by one person. All the guests who pass the Yunlu lean on the railing or the window, looking at the famous Xianxia from a distance. Finally come. In fact, a small percentage of the immortal genealogists and Yamazawa Noxiu who came to join in the fun were all rushing to this person, just to try their luck and see with their own eyes the most likely questioning sword of this person. The owner of Fenglei Garden sword repairs the Yellow River. The inn was noisy, whispering everywhere. The centuries-long grievance between Xingyang Mountain and Fenglei Garden has been talked about by the monks on the Aquarius Mountain for more than a century. Why Yuan Bai asked Jianfeng Lei Yuan. The entire Aquarius Island knew it well. But Yuan Bai was severely injured and he was destined to be unable to break through this life. But he still only delayed the Yellow River's breakthrough. Li Tuanjing Weijin Yellow River. It is recognized that Aquarius Island has the best sword practice qualifications for thousands of years. Qin Pingan also sat up and looked at the Jianxiu who appeared at Bai Ludu, Li Tuanjing's big disciple and Lu Bakio Sr. The first time I saw this person was on the intercontinental ferry at Daoist. With the help of mirror flowers, water and moon, I was able to watch the sword of the Fengxue temple Xianxia. Qin Pingan was very impressed by the Yellow River because this person was extremely sharp in his sword. The sword heart of the fairy Sujia was broken. At that time Qin Pingan was in a low realm. He was just a layman watching the excitement. After he truly became a sword repairman, when he looked back he would understand that the person in the Yellow River would already be in the Yupu realm if he was in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and he was qualified to be Mihu. Yu Qing is an alternate to the peak sword immortal. The arrival of the Yellow River, the unexpected and reasonable appearance of the egret crossing, made the festive atmosphere of Xingyang Mountain suddenly stagnant. For a time the flying swords and magic techniques continued to spread the news, and the news was quickly passed on. However, outside the gate of the Patriarch of the First Line Peak, the sovereign Zhu Huang is standing side by side with the white-clothed old ape at this moment. The two Yupu realms, one smiled lightly and confidently and the other sneered and sneered. At present, Xingyang Mountain is full of talents, and the peaks are full of immortal masters, emperors and gods from the mountains and rivers. Some people have been amazed, saying that outside the battlefield, Xingyang Mountain today can be regarded as the place with the most gathering places. For example, Qi Zhen Tianjun of God's Immortal Zone took his direct disciples and personally came to Xingyang Mountain and settled on the first-line peak of Zhu Mountain. A young gentleman from the Jiang family in Yunlin, who is said to be the next master of the Jiang family, and Jiang Yun of the same generation as well as a woman from the Jiang family who married the old Longqing Fu family, have arrived at Xingyang Mountain and lived with them. At the top of the peak of Patriarch Xianxia, the new lord of the True Realm School of Shijianhu, the immortal Lu Laoqing, was promoted to the chief dedicated to Lu Jimao of the Jade Realm, and the second dedicated to Li Fuyu. The three also showed up together, came to congratulate and stayed at Yunfeng. Even the king of Zhongyue Mountain Jinqing had negotiated with the court of Dai and finally settled down on Xiefeng. In Qingfeng City, which also ranks among the sects, the head of the Su family lives in Feng Tu, Tao Yanba with his wife and children, as well as the son-in-law of a son of Yuan family in Shangzhou Kingdom. It is said that there is also a hunting envoy, Chao Ping, on the side of the Dali court, who will visit Xingyang Mountain with the Shangshu of the Ministry of Rites of the capital. The old mountain lord of Yunxia Mountain and a very young nascent soul monk, now Kai Jinjian, the female ancestor of Yunxia Mountain, also came to Xingyang Mountain. Not to mention the large and small emperors and monarchs around Xingyang Mountain, all left the capital one after another, and along the way they encountered a lot of landscape gods. Probably the only inadequacy is Fengxue Temple, Zhenwu Mountain and Longquan Sword Sect. None of these three forces came to congratulate them. Qin Pingan suddenly got up from the wicker chair and came to the railing in an instant. When he held the white jade Ganoderma lucidum and did that action. Obviously, the other party immediately got rid of some magical powers of looking at mountains and rivers. Su Hun was standing at the railing of the tall building of the mansion. This Qingfeng city lord didn't think that Huang He asked the sword today to succeed. The big and small Gushan mountains are collectively called the Zhuanlu Peak. There is a woman who is quietly brought back to the teacher's gate. She has a beautiful appearance. Standing on the cliff of Xiaogu Mountain, the long T is standing, her face pale and colorless, but she adds a bit of beauty, inspiring. Outside the Patriarch Hall, the Emperor Zhu smiled and said, "With the temper of the Yellow River, at least you have to hand a sword to our Patriarch Hall before you are willing to leave." The old ape in white sneered with his arms around his chest. It's best to add Qin Pingon and Lu Xianying to ask the sword together. Sure enough, as the Emperor of Bamboo had expected, the yellow river came out of the sword. But one sword after another, the peaks of Xingyang Mountain were questioned one by one. On the side of the first-line peak, the Lord Zhuhuang personally took the sword to dispel the sword light, and the rest of the peaks, their respective mountain protection formations were opened instantly, and then the old sword immortals took the sword based on this. In addition, some experts who were guests of Xingyang Mountain all helped to take the next sword. The old ape in white asked, "I will meet him for a while?" The Emperor Bamboo smiled and said, "Zongmin is overjoyed, let's not fight and kill, let him go. Otherwise it will not sound good saying that there are many people in Xingyang Mountain and bullying a junior who is only in the nascent soul stage." The Yellow River stood in place for a while, and saw that no sword repairman appeared in Xingyang Mountain. He left without a trace. He said that he would come again next time and only asked the ancestor of the sword front line peak. Qin Pingon lay back in the wicker chair and breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately he didn't make a big fight. In the middle of the night, Lu Xianying took the ferry to Bailude leisurely, and found Qin Pingon in the Jiazifang of the Yunlu building. He cursed and said that the Yellow River was too much. "I also moved a wicker chair for myself." Lu Xianying lay on the side, holding the back of his head with his hands, looking at the bright starry sky and asked with a smile, "How can I ask the sword?" Qin Pingon thought for a while and said, "Just climb from the foot of the mountain and then take out the sword. I will sit on the side of the Patriarch Hall of the frontline peak and sit and drink tea and wait for you slowly."